What's up? I missed you guys. It's been a couple days. Subscribe Cat is booting up right now. It's been like 2 days, guys. Alright, let's start up a test raffle right now. Make sure our raffle's working. Good stuff. Good stuff. Looks like it's working just fine. Cool. We'll let this one run out. I figure we run some GVG and do some bets. Need to give our early bird bonus too. What's up, Clash? And I've got a awesome beer right here. What's up, Division? I think we need to run a couple guild versus guilds. Let's do it. That beer sound is good, isn't it? Oh my god. So let's kick off some betting on guild versus guild.
Buy another one, you rich motherfucker.
Okay, you got 1 minute to place your bets. I'm gonna take on Taco Sushi. There's 2 options, so you get 2 extra bets. There's no limit on the betting, and it just closed. Betting just closed. I've got the wrong pet equipped. Oh well. Let's make it happen. What's up, Buck? What's up, Dika? Option 2, 2 times your bet. Same betting again. You got 1 minute. We do. That's actually going to be the first raffle of the night. Yeah, 5-stack shrimps is amazing for new players. I actually need to go back and equip Quimby for this guild vs guild. Whoops. Okay, betting is closed. Let's get it on. If you guys want to test whether you can enter a raffle or not, you got 2 minutes. And here's our early bird reward. Seems like a pretty solid team. Zero stopped playing, so I'm playing his account. But at one point, Zero was someone else. If you guys want to try to snipe a raffle where you win absolutely nothing, now's your chance. Option 1, we won that fight. 2 times your bets. Another Stevens battle. Let's go ahead and start betting. I think they're interesting, Mike. I think they're interesting. I think it's just a good way to get more cash out of us. I think if you have, like I have Love Boy, I'll just probably stick with that. Lord him on. Won an LOL cat. Get your bets in, guys. We got 10 seconds left in betting. And we need to give up. Let's go ahead and get this fight started. I'm gonna go change up to Quimby here. Alright, option 1, 2 times your bets. And I'm going to set a 2-minute betting window here, so that betting window is starting right now. Get your bets in while I sort out what the raffle's going to be. And I'm also going to change my pet from Love Boy. We'll go ahead and change it up to Quimby. Nice bat. Nice bat, Raz. Let's do this. I was gonna raffle some Zero Crash guild slots, but I tell you what, let's do some Bat Raz raffles. You're putting in work, man. You were 305 the other day. Let's see what your TS gains are. Looking good, man. $21.66 TS. Looking good. Let's get us a Bat Raz raffle going. Everybody give Bat Raz some love for raffling his slots on the stream, man. What a nice guy. And let's let's get back into our GVG betting. Okay, betting is closed. Option 2. Okay, another Stevas fight. I'm gonna go ahead and start betting, and I'm gonna grab a beer. Be right back. Alright, 40 seconds left in betting. Hey, let's see if I can make that awesome beer sound. You guys ready? It's definitely not as good as beer though, I tell you what. Alright, betting is closed in 10 seconds. We can start our round here. Subscribe Cat might be a little chat lagged. Give him a minute to catch up. All right. Option 1, winner. start up 1 minute betting for the next round here. I think good betting, you don't want to do much more than 30% of your coins. Divide your coins in 3. Don't bet more than 1/3. Yeah, I just realized we've got amazing item find today, so I figure F it. Let's just do some GVG right now. Okay, betting is closed. Let's go ahead and take on the Taiko Sushi. Yeah, I think Subscribe Cat's a little chat lagged right now. Ooh, those empowered crits. There goes the entries. He's just chat lagged, that's all. Alright, this fight's... I'm gonna go for a Sieja on this fight. We'll go ahead and do betting. Oh, and option 2 was the winner on that one. Right now I'm using Quimby Clash. Let me double check. There is a 1 minute timer on coins right now. Three minutes could be a little harsh. Okay, let's get this Siege fight underway here. What's crazy is it goes so far in the direction one way or the other. Like the empowered crits, when those go off, it's just crazy. So much range. Congrats, Mark. You've got 2 minutes to reply in chat. Nice, Mark. Let me DM Bat for you here. And let's start up another raffle. You guys ready? Awesome, Edmund. That's great, buddy. Appreciate it. Okay, this fight is going to be Brazili. Let's go ahead and get this betting going. And option 1 was the winner of last round. He's got about 20 more TS than me at this point. 19 more TS. Okay. Betting is almost closed. Here we go. I agree, Not. I agree. Uh-oh. Option 2. Winner. Do another siege fight, guys. I don't know what's going on with Subscribe Cat tonight. I think he's chat lagged. Yeah, it does seem that way. It does. All right, let's get the siege fight underway here. Yeah, whoever gets that first empowered crit and makes it 3v2 in the beginning, it's the game changer right there. It's brutal. Hey, good night, Clash. Okay, option 2, winner. And what I'm actually gonna do is drop some TS. But first, I'd like to reforge some of my gear. I'm flipping all my gear to the even stat setup, so that way it's a heck of a lot easier for me to drop a piece and not lose my mind. Okay, now when I take off my ring, should be a little bit better than losing all my health. There we go. There we go. I also need to change up to Baronet. Change a couple of my runes. Alright, let's go ahead and get our bets placed. You guys should just be multiplying coins at this point. I switched over to the empowered accessory, Baronet. Well, now that I'm done with my 2 item find and my 2 XP, it is time. I've only put about 8,000 rune shards into item find and XP runes. It's time to start rolling some combat runes.
To another edition of Thunderdome!
Alright, embedding is closed. Let's get this fight started. Okay, option 1, winner. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a 1,000 coin limit on betting here forward, okay? Yes, 1,000 coin limit. Max bet 1,000. And we got a raffle winner. Andres Julio. Nice. I need your IGN, buddy. Congrats. Congrats. Okay, let's kick off another raffle. Let's get this GVG started. We'll go ahead and take on Skirt. And option 1 is the winner. We'll go ahead and take on number 1 again in this next fight. Yeah, we may have to run without the raffles tonight. Okay. Betting is closed. Man, Quimby might not be the meta anymore. Look at these healers. Just going crazy. These healers with heal pets. Just rocking stuff. Alright. Option 1, winner. Thought we were done there for a minute. Okay. Oh, and we got our boy Knotlock in here, so you guys get a reward. We're gonna go ahead and fight Knotlock on V-Drag. Go ahead and get your bets in. And I'm just assuming that betting is working, so I have no idea if SubscribeCat is actually giving the rewards for betting, so. Yeah, we could do it, I guess. Optech. Yeah, you guys get the Hound. You guys get a reward if you show up. So we'll do it. We'll do it. 3 seconds. There you go. I'm gonna go ahead and start up our battle here. Okay, option 1, winner. All right, here we go. It's been so long. It's been 2 whole days. Oh my god. I missed you too, Keebly. I missed you too. Alright, option 1. This is like coin multiplying. This is not even betting. Alright. Betting is open. I really want to get some Orlag with a great team. Okay, let's go. Let's multiply some coins. Watch, we get wrecked. Oh, I'm about to die. Deflect OP. Deflect is so OP. My god. Oh no. It's turtle humping. Pablo, congrats. IGN. Ski the slump god. Okay. Next raffle. We may lose this. We're gonna lose. Oh. Option 2, winner. Oh, and we got Knotlock again. Go ahead and bet on that while I figure out the next raffle here. Yeah, they had a lot of deflect, man. We basically killed ourselves. Deflected to death. Making some gains at mod. Jeez. 362 to 380. Okay, here goes that Edmont raffle. And let's put our bets to the test. Option 1, winner. Yeah, there's mad lag on Subscribe Cat. Oh, we got Banks. Is Banks on right now? Nope. We'll go ahead and do a Banks fight. Okay, betting is closing. It's Attack of the Pizzas. Pizza power. Okay, option 1. Yeah, it's not Subscribe Cat. It's actually chat lag on YouTube right now. All right. Salinos. Next fight. Alright, let's go. I think it might be time for some Sasquatch Chronicles. What do you guys think? Oh, Batraz reading my mind. It is time. It's time for some Sasquatch Chronicles, guys. Option 1, winner. Bisky doesn't like the Sasquatches. Alright. Oh, Sparkly Troll! Sparkly Troll is here, guys. Reward 100. Alright, it's just time to pause that horrible, horrible YouTube music. We're gonna play some Sasquatch Chronicles.
Black thing go from left. It's about 6 foot.
You're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles. Check us out online at sasquatchchronicles.com. If you've had an encounter, email me. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com.
Poor Bisky. Poor Bisky. I'm actually going to talk through it this time.
Thanks for being here tonight, Sunday night. I love Sunday night. Thanks so much for listening tonight. Got an interesting encounter for you. I'll be speaking to Jonathan, and Jonathan shares an encounter that happened to him over 40 years ago when he was out playing. He lived out in the country and came face to face with one of these creatures. And if you're listening to this on SasquatchChronicles.com, below this episode, you can actually see the picture that Jonathan drew of what he saw that day. And what's interesting about what Jonathan saw that day is he saw the canines. It had canines sticking out of its mouth. And what's interesting about that is I've had people on in the past who've run into that type of creature where they have the huge canines sticking out outside of the mouth, and they're never good encounters. They're never good encounters. They're usually more aggressive, tend to be more violent type encounters, and I've had a couple of them on the show. What's different about Jonathan's encounter
Option 1
is the creature just kind of stood there
was no betting.
and just looked at him and really didn't do anything. And it's just a fascinating encounter. That'll be coming up here shortly. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And I've been working hard on the new show, Monsters in the Shadows. I'm hoping to get a couple of them out to you guys this month. I think you guys are really going to like it. Hey, if you don't, that's okay. Don't listen to it. But I really think that you guys will enjoy this. It's the same type of concept as Sasquatch Chronicles, just with different types
Someone's about to win Edmont in a second.
And broader topics. So I think you guys will really like it. Let's jump into it tonight. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
I was really interested in your encounter, so thank you so much again for being here tonight. For the audience, would you mind starting from the very beginning? Just tell us what you're out doing, and then just walk us into what happened.
Well, as most boys are when they're growing up, they've got tree houses and stuff like that. And generally, I had, of course, tree houses and stuff, but I had also had an idea when I was younger to kind of build a little underground fort, and was probably working on it for, I'd say, a couple weeks. And it was in the early spring when I had started to work on it. The ground was still kind of, a little bit of permafrost was still on the ground because this was in a northern Ohio location. And I dug one hole,
Gray Arctic.
I don't know, 4 foot by 6 foot by about 2.5 foot deep, believe it or not. And then I dug another hole right next to it, and then kind of dug a tunnel in between the two. And then had chopped down some of the small trees that were in the thicket that was right next to the fort, and put those down, and then put some plywood on top, and then covered it with some dirt and so forth, and then dug a main entrance to one of the larger holes. And it was probably about, 3 foot long, about 2, 3 foot deep also. And I remember that it was on a Sunday afternoon. Actually, it was like Sunday, probably about 1 or 2 o'clock. And I was kind of going in and out the hole, pulling dirt out and so forth, and having fun like boys will do. And had been doing it for a while. I'd say I've been working on it for probably about an hour or so, hour and a half or something, and really didn't, hear anything or smell anything. Didn't have any indications, and then had gotten out of the hole, the main hole that was going down into the fort, and started making it a little wider, and was reaching my hand down in there and scooping dirt out. And of course my head was in the hole and out the hole. And I had all of a sudden, out of the blue, just got a feeling that I was being watched. So I popped my head back out and basically stood up, and then just turned around. And when I turned around, I noticed immediately that to my right-hand side, about 10 foot away from me, there was this creature standing there. It really stunned me. And I stood there looking at it, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I literally stood there for quite some time. It had to be at least 10 minutes, just looking at it. It was confusing me because it wasn't moving. I didn't smell any odor. It didn't blink. It seemed like it was a doll. It just seemed like it wasn't real. And my curiosity, of course, got the better of me. I guess I was kind of crazy at the time of what I had done. So I started walking towards it, and it was in the thicket that was right next to the fort, which was the beginning of the thicket, was about 5 foot from the fort. And I had a little path that was in the thicket. Basically, it was right in front of me as I was standing, because I used to always go through that thicket. The thicket was about 15 feet wide, but it ran the length of the whole 5 acres. And on the opposite side of the thicket was nothing but, tall grass and so forth. And I had started walking towards it because I was like, well, is this real or isn't this real? I mean, am I seeing an illusion? Are these shadows? What is this? And I guess I got within I took about 4 or 5 steps and got within about 7, 8 foot. And then all of a sudden, it swayed to the left, and it swayed to the right, and it swayed back to the left. And when it did that, generally, all of a sudden, it struck me that it was real. And the fear of God pretty much hit me, and I just flat out turned around and just ran as quickly as I could back to the house, which was approximately, 75 yards from where the fort was, and hit the back porch. I went through the back door, ran up directly to my dad's office, and told my dad, of course, that, hey, Dad, there's this monster back there that's in the woods. And, and I was real shook up, but he just poo-hooed it, basically. He's, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, okay, Jonathan, okay. And I said, no, there is. No, Jonathan. So I said, okay, fine, all right. So, I went back down the stairs, went into my bedroom, and then sat on the bed for a few minutes, and, I was, well, did I really see that? Oh, okay, wait a minute. And since my bedroom faced basically that direction, and you could see the thicket and my tree that had my tree house in and so forth from my window, I spread the curtains back open and looked out, and I could still see that creature standing in the thicket, and he was still standing there. oh, I pretty much closed the curtain. I was like, well, okay, I'm not going back outside no more. And I'm pretty shook up and pretty much was trying to calm myself down. And, you know, boys be boys. Of course, I had my toys, my army men, and all the other stuff that we had when we were younger. And this is back in the early 70s. And pretty much calm myself down and so forth. And I'd say about 2 or 3 hours later, I'd gotten up the courage to go ahead and spread the curtain again and see if he was still there. And he wasn't. He was definitely gone. I don't remember. I mean, of course, you know, we had gone to church and so forth and things of that nature. And we went to church that evening. And I really don't remember. I don't know, maybe it's a blackout or something from memory or something, but I really don't remember much past the second time I had looked out the curtain to see if he was there or not. From the first encounter that I actually had with that creature.
I wanted to ask you, how long do you think you were standing there staring at this thing?
I would say that it was definitely over 5 minutes. I mean, at least 10 minutes, because I was in a state of awe and also a state of shock. Because, Wes, I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. It was, you know, one thing that made a very deep impression about this creature was it was really, really very majestic looking, and it was actually just a very, very beautiful creature, color-wise, and just the way that the creature looked. I mean, it was frightening as all get out, but it was just very, very majestic. It was just a type of creature that in the wild, it looked like it belonged. And it was something that was very, very unique and rare. Of course, now I realize, and it took me a while, as I said before, when I was standing there looking at it, I couldn't figure out what it was. I just wasn't, I mean, I had this creature standing in front of me, and he was extremely close. Like I said, he was at least 10 foot from me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And that's something that I probably carry with me for the rest of my life, because I was in such awe of kind of looking at what this creature was, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. And for the audience, can you describe what you saw?
Yeah, approximately. Of course, this happened, you know, over 40 years ago. So my recollection, I'd say it'd be a good 80, 90%, because this is something that you really don't forget after seeing something like this, of course. But I'd say he was between 7 to 8 foot. In the thicket of woods that he was in, pretty much I saw from like his chest up. I didn't see, and of course I was fixated on his face and the chest. But mainly that's what I'd seen. I didn't see really any hands. I didn't see any feet. But his face, which is kind of what the majestic part to me about it, was that he had light brown fur and hair around his face, but then around his eyes and coming down his cheeks and around his mouth and down from his chin, there was this pure white fur and like a beard goatee that blended into his chest and then came down and into a small white patch that was on his chest. And the thing that also had really struck me while I was looking at it was that it looked like it had come from a beauty salon. I mean, it sounds strange, but it looked like someone had blow dried his hair and combed it back, and he wasn't gnarly. His hair wasn't all over the place. It was very well manicured. It was just pure white for the face and the fur, like I said before, going down with the goatee down into his chest with the small patch, and then the rest of it was a light brown fur. It wasn't dark brown. It was all light brown fur and light brown hair. The head shape, it didn't have a cone shape. It had a general round shape for the head, and it didn't have a neck because it blended in pretty much into his shoulders. And the real interesting part that also stuck out tremendously was that this one had two canines, and they were anywhere from about an inch to an inch and a half. Of course, one was on the left and one was for the right, but I only saw two of them extending downwards. And since he had like this beard fur that was around his mouth, I could see a little bit of teeth besides the canines and a little bit of the lips. But, you know, it was covered with, you know, the fur and the hair from a beard and a goatee style. And then he had the kind of look that was on his face was one of surprise, but then it was also one of the word anger, I guess, would describe it, but more as a looming style look, more of a not really a grimace look, but more of a that he was surprised that I was looking directly at him. And there again, too, he didn't move. He didn't blink when I was looking at him. He didn't sway back and forth like what he did when I started walking towards him. And it really was just a very, very majestic creature that I was staring at, and I was flat out astounded. I saw generally the frontal view of him because he was facing me. He was facing forward. Of course, when I turned around, I was facing forward, and he was off to my right. So he was extremely close. And the definition that he had on his shoulders was kind of like I'd say a linebacker. Very, very broad-shouldered. I don't recall whether I saw any muscles and so forth that was on his arms or anything like on the sides of his shoulders, because he was in the thicket of the trees, and the trees were pretty much covering him up. And as I kind of thought back on this, you know, years later, I've often wondered how, I don't understand how he got so close to me without me at least hearing him or something, because, you know, there was an awful lot of branches and small dead trees that was in that small thicket, and there was a lot of grass that was behind it and so forth. So if he came up from behind, you would think a creature that large, that you would hear it walking up, or if it was moving through the thicket, that I would have heard it coming through the thicket. But see, there again, too, I didn't hear anything. So how he came up on me so stealthy, that personally, that's something that really bothers me now that I'm an adult. I mean, if it wanted to, shoot, I mean, my head was down in that hole for, you know, quite some time, playing and getting dirt out and so forth of the fort. I mean, if he wanted to, if he got that close to me, I don't know if he was closer to me, but if he wanted to, he could have snatched me up, broke my neck, and drug me away, and no one would have done anything. But generally, that's what I remember of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of times when I talk to witnesses, as you and I talked before we went on the air, I was telling you, a lot of times when they describe the ones with canines, they tend to be more aggressive. And that's what I find fascinating about your encounter, because it really wasn't super aggressive. I mean, he's glaring at you, and most witnesses talk about the glare when they come face to face with one. They'll say it didn't look happy. It looked like it was pissed off and just kind of give me the stink eye. Did the expression on its face change at all?
No. That's what I'm looking for. That's what was so kind of shocking about when I was looking at it. No. When it started swaying, it still didn't blink its eyes, and the expression didn't change. It just, it just swayed back and forth about 3 times, and then all of a sudden, I realized, okay, whatever that is, it's real, and I got scared to death and just took off.
Yeah, and that's an interesting note too. You know, a lot of primates, non-human primates, even human primates, will do the swaying thing when they start getting nervous or agitated. You'll see a lot of great apes do that. They'll start rocking back and forth from side to side, and they're working their way up into a fight. And so it starts swaying. You realize, wow, this thing's real, and then you take off running. When you were looking at it, did the face look more human, would you say? Or would you say it was more of a non-human primate? How would you describe the face?
I would describe the face as it was human looking, kind of in stature and build and everything, but face-wise, no. I mean, yes, it had a head, but it didn't. But as I said before, it didn't have a neck. And it was more of an animal style face, but not really, but it really didn't look like a gorilla either. Now that I look back, to me, it looked like I'd say a hybrid between a human's face and with a comparison, it's hard to say. It just had a very, very unique, majestic look to it. With the white fur that was around its eyes and it blended into that goatee, I don't recall really seeing a chin, because all I saw was, the beard and so forth, and of course the mustache and stuff that was coming, that was around its mouth itself. Wes, I had never seen anything like it before, of course, and I've never seen anything like it since. And I have seen some drawings of some other sightings and so forth of some of the Sasquatches, and this one wasn't messed up in the face like I've seen some of these drawings. It really didn't look like it was a Neanderthal type creature or anything of that nature. It kind of looked more like a Chewbacca style face, like on Star Wars, but with just the white fur around his eyes, and then, like I said before, they came down to the goatee. And it's really, really hard for me to kind of compare it, because I've never seen any other type of face like it besides maybe the Chewbacca creature, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And I get completely what you mean when you say majestic. I've had other people on, and they've used the terms unique or different, something new. And when they see it, they're not really sure what category to put it into, because it's not really an ape. It's not really a person, but they have a hard time placing it somewhere. And it's just interesting. I mean, I think those canines, I'm looking at your drawing, and I'll post a picture of your drawing. I thought you did a great job on it, of what you actually saw. And to see those big canines coming out, I mean, that would freak me out. Did the creature at all vocalize, or did you hear it make any sort of sound?
Okay. Now this is kind of like the second encounter that I have with the creature. At that time, it did not vocalize. Like I said, all it did was sway, and that was enough for me. And I took off like a bunny rabbit, and
Yeah, I don't blame
the
you.
Roadrunner. Hey, as fast as I ran, I made the Roadrunner look like a turtle. But anyways, the very next morning, which was about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, I had to catch the school bus to go to school, because school was going to start getting out, and I think we had like a week or something left. And I was standing at the bus stop with a friend of mine who lived across the street. It was about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and from behind the house, we heard a very large, very loud moan that went into a growl, then into a long screech, and it was just unbelievable.
Sorry about that, Not.
And it was extremely loud. I mean, I'm sure half the neighborhood heard it that morning. And it lasted for probably I don't know, 4 to 5 seconds. And I always remember this because my friend that I had across the street turned and looked at me and said, "What was that?" And I said, "That's that blasted monster that I saw yesterday I was telling you about." And his eyes were just as big as golf balls, and so were mine. And we were basically both standing there kind of shaking after what we had heard. And thank God the bus showed up, because we got on the bus and jumped on the bus and was pretty shook up because of it. But that's the only time that I ever heard any type of vocalization, which might have been it. And it was directly behind the house where we had heard it that morning. And I mean, it sounded like it came from about the general location of where the fort was that morning. And that was the very next morning. That's really the only vocalization. And I've heard a couple recordings of some of them on the web and so forth, and also off of your show. And it's really, really hard to describe the type of sound that he made. I couldn't even imitate it if I tried, but the moan kind of into the screech was just very, very, very loud, and it was very forceful and strong. Whatever done that, which it probably was him, had a lot of power behind it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. You never really know what their intentions are. And I like to ask the witnesses what they thought the intentions were. And as you're sitting there playing and you look up, you see this thing, it's just looking at you. And I love the whole encounter because you talk about it. You're like, is it a doll? Is it, it's not moving? Is it real? And then you get up like a child's curiosity and start walking towards it. As it's swaying, you realize it's real. What did you think its intentions were? What did you think the creature was doing?
Well, like I said before, if it wanted to have grabbed me, it could have it at probably any time. I don't know how long it had been standing back there. I don't even know when it showed up. I mean, that's what really astounds me over the years, like I said, is how stealthy this thing was. Because of course, when I first started working on the fort itself, there was nothing like that was in the thicket, because it was just that close. It was nothing but trees. But what I think maybe it was doing is, I don't know, in a way, maybe it was curious as to what I was doing. Maybe it was looking for a afternoon snack. I don't know. But at that time, it did not make any aggressive moves towards me or anything. It didn't vocalize at me or anything until I had moved towards it. Is the only time that I saw it move, and then it just swayed back and forth. So I think maybe it was, I don't know, building up enough courage maybe to grab me. I mean, I was 9 years old, and it had canines, and after hearing some of the reports on the web and also from your show, I mean, I think maybe I was extremely lucky. I just think maybe that feeling of being watched, fortunately, somehow my subconscious picked it up, and I startled it before I tried to do anything. But it might have just been curious. It was about a couple nights later, 2 or 3 nights, and it was around the evening time also, which is, I'll call this kind of like the third encounter with the creature. There was something that was outside the window and it was the window that was facing towards the backyard, which was, of course, facing the ticket area. And I heard some noises. I don't remember what the noises were, but I remember that I had spread the curtains open, and there he was again. He was staring me basically right in the face. Just absolute sheer shock and terror, because he was probably 2-3 feet from my face, and I'm looking at him through the window, and I slinging the curtains closed, dove underneath my bed, shaking and scared. And no, I didn't scream for my mom and dad because there was kind of no use in it because they probably wouldn't believe me anyways. And I just pretty much stayed underneath my bed shaking and then I had fallen asleep. So in regards to what he was probably doing was, I think it was more curiosity there again too. When I'd opened up the curtains and saw him, he had his head cocked down a little bit and kind of looking in the window. And there again too, I think I startled him when I flung the curtains open and looked at him. I mean, he didn't grimace at me. He didn't, bare his teeth or anything at me. It was just like a quick, 2-second look and boom, there he was. And then I just slammed the curtains. So I don't know, maybe he was just curious from the original encounter. And then obviously he saw where I ran and how he knew that was my window. I don't know. Or if he even knew that was my window, maybe he had been looking in the windows before. That I don't know either. But that's pretty much the third encounter that I had with him. And then after that, I never saw him again. Another strange thing, Wes, was that I was all over that property. We had 5 acres. The property had grapevines. It had an apple orchard. We had pear trees, plum trees. We had cherry trees. We had pheasants. That was back in the grass of the 5 acres. We had woods back in there. We had a motorcycle trail that was cut through there also, and myself and other family members were just all through that property. And to my knowledge, none of my family members, including myself, ever encountered anything like that. It was just those 3 days for the main encounter and then the vocalization and then the time he popped up at the window, and that was pretty much it. Never heard it ever again, never saw it ever again or anything. That's just how quick it happened. And I guess being a child, I blocked out a lot of the horrific fear parts of it. But it seems like there is some memories of something else with my bedroom in the window, but I don't remember it. So I don't want to discuss it because I don't want to give out any false data on it.
Yeah, and I understand that. It's interesting, and a lot of times with encounters like this, when they come up to the home, and I've talked to many witnesses where they're around people's homes, and it's interesting because it seems like the creatures focus in on one person. They put all of their time and energy. They'll start just focusing on one individual at the home, and usually it's a child or it's a female. Rarely do they focus on adult grown men, which I don't quite understand, but they'll focus in on kids. I had these 2 brothers on one time, and I'll probably give an update on what happened to them. But what was interesting, they were super aggressive with the brothers, and the brothers had plans on killing them. It got really bad around this property. I mean, really, really bad. It makes the siege of Hanabia look like a joke. And one of the brothers told me that it kept coming up to his daughter's window. She's 8 years old. And he would catch it. He would go in there. She would start yelling. He would go in there and see it at the window. He'd turn the light on, and it would get up and walk back into the tree line. And why they focus in on a particular individual, I'm not sure. As the years went by on this property, did you ever pull your mom and dad aside and say, hey, listen, the day I told you I saw something, I wasn't pulling your leg. I actually did see something.
Yeah, yes. A few years later, I had, and in fact, I guess about 5 or 10 years ago, I had also spoken with my dad about it, and there again too, they had an extremely hard time believing it, and they pretty much just chalked it up to a child's imagination. And I got news for you. It was not no child's imagination. The next morning, like I said, that vocalization was just astounding, absolutely astounding. And the other main encounter, I mean, it's a creature that was just absolutely majestic and beautiful. And I tried to explain this to them also, but, you know, parents just don't have any reference of any type of creatures like that. And, you know, most people don't even believe that they even exist. So you're kind of dealing with flat out negativity, and they're not going to believe you anyway. So finally, I just pretty much had given up. But when I mentioned it to Dad about 10 years ago, because I was asking him, I said, did you ever see or hear it? And the conversation ended very quickly. It was like, well, no, Jonathan, and that was just your imagination. And I'm sure that's what a lot of children had gotten from their parents with these type of encounters.
No, I tend to agree with you, and it's kind of a shame because it's actually some of the best reports I've ever gotten were from kids. They can pull out the details and really tell you exactly what they saw. It's amazing. I mean, I would say a child will give you a better description on what they saw than most adults, and it's too bad that your folks wouldn't take the time to listen. Do you think deep down your dad probably knew there was something going on there? I know your dad was a religious man, and we'll kind of leave it at that, but do you think that kind of played a role in him not really wanting to address this?
There again, too, that's a very, very good possibility. As I think back, there were a couple strange circumstances that did occur, and I won't kind of get into detail, but another thing that was interesting was about 6 months after that encounter, we had moved. As I look back, and I was like, well, it is kind of interesting. 6 months later, we all of a sudden packed up and moved. Dad was always out on the property also, and of course, you know, we were going to school and things of that nature during the, school season and so forth. He did a lot of gardening and, of course, pruned the trees and then taking care of the apple grove and stuff of that nature. It's a very good possibility, Wes. It's a very, very good possibility. But do I know for a fact? No. But there were a couple of strange occurrences that didn't make any sense. I would assume that this creature pretty much was maybe during my encounter was kind of maybe just in the area, or do you think maybe it had been watching, I don't know, the house and myself for quite some time before it got that close? I mean, I really don't understand their behavior in regards to like what their locale is and why we didn't see it, after or really before that, or why at least I didn't see it before that or after that. Because, I mean, I was all through those woods. When it snowed, I'd be back in there in the woods playing. I'd be back in there, hunting some bunny rabbits and stuff. And we had pheasants. I mean, the pheasants were everywhere up there. Nice large pheasants. They would always have their nests that were down in the grass with, 20, 30 eggs and so forth. And, I mean, there was plenty of food and wildlife that would be there for those type of creatures. But I often wondered why we never, that's really the only time that I had ever seen it, considering how much time I spent on that property and out in the woods. I mean, do you think it was just observing us and then it decided to get close that one time?
It's hard to say. I know in most situations there seems to be two different things that go on when people see them on their property. They're passing through. It's kind of a route that they go through. Certain times of the year they'll follow the food and they'll show up on people's property, but they don't stay long. They're usually only there for a short amount of time and then they're gone. I have had witnesses I've talked to over the phone, and a lot of times they don't want to come on the air, but what they will say is, certain months out of the year, they try and stay off their property. They don't go exploring their own property. And I'll ask them, well, why is that? And they'll say, well, these things show up October through January. They'll show up and we'll hear them screaming and yelling and roaring at night. And then after about January, they're gone and everything kind of returns to normal. And then you have other encounters when you talk to people to where these things are on the property nonstop. That's their area. And it usually is people who just moved to a location, or this house has been abandoned for 5 years and now someone just bought it, that sort of thing. And they're on the property nonstop. And I've had those people on the air too as well. It sounds like in your situation, it was just kind of passing through. And my own opinion, which means nothing, but my own opinion is I think it was more or less just curious on what you were doing. It was kind of fixated on what you were doing because it didn't growl at you. It didn't really do anything aggressive towards you. I think the swaying from side to side is more or less a nervous reaction. They're not really sure what to do.
Walking towards it.
Yeah, because you're walking towards it, and so it's more of a nervous. What are you gonna do? But I would imagine being 9, 10 years old, it looked at you as not really a threat. But it's still unnerving to have something walk. Imagine a little one walking up towards you as a full grown adult. You would immediately start getting a little bit nervous. Even though you could probably take down a 3 foot, 4 foot tall one, you would still be nervous having one walk right up to you. And I kind of think that's what it was doing. And it was probably just curious. How they know what window you're at is beyond me. But
that's bizarre.
Yeah, well, it's not as bizarre as you think. In my own home, I'll tell you, I let my he's the smartest dog on the planet. He's a pit bull. And he's basically like my child. Sure. But when I let him out, he knows what room I'm in. He'll run around the house, and he knows exactly what room I'm in. He'll start whining underneath my window because he wants back in. And how he knows what room I'm in is beyond me. But for some reason, he can run around the home, find out exactly where I'm at, and start whining. And I kind of think it's the same thing with these things. I don't think it's anything magical. I think they can just kind of zero in on where you're at, similar to a dog. And it's just interesting, though. I'm telling you, this is the reason why I'm so fascinated with your encounter is I've had so many people on that talk about seeing the canines, and it's never good. The encounters are never good. I don't think I've had one good encounter when they describe the canines. Usually people talk about them as the Janoskwa. There's other names for them. But they have the larger canines, and they tend to be way more aggressive where they will charge you, they will attack you, and they have zero qualms about doing that. And this one really didn't. It just kind of looked at you, and it just reacted to you walking towards it. And 10 feet away, man, that's too close. I don't care who you are. That is too close to one of these things, I get it, though, being a kid. I look at my son who's 14, and I don't think this kid has a fear of dying at all. I think he thinks he's going to live forever because he has zero, he's not worried about anything. And sometimes we'll go out in the woods together. I'll tell him, hey, tone it down a little bit. Be careful out here. You're not the biggest, baddest thing out here. Relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's more of a child thing, when you being 9 or 10 years old. Hey, I'm going to go check this thing out. It doesn't look real to me. I'm going to go walk up to it.
And what I feel is very interesting too is this is the first time, like I described to you before, that I've heard that other people had actually seen one with canines. Because like I've explained this encounter to a couple close friends and stuff over the years, and it's extremely hard to believe that it had canines. I mean, it sounds like something that is made up. And then after you told me that other people have actually seen them with canines, I was like, well, that's incredible. Well, then obviously there's a species of Sasquatch that, yes, that definitely does have canines. And one thing I'm curious about is that, has anyone ever mentioned to you that they had white, fur and stuff around their eyes that went down into a goatee, maybe from the Ohio area? Has anybody seen that type of canine creature, the one that I saw specifically, or maybe that type before? Has anybody described that type of fur whiteness that was around their face? I mean, he was beautiful, Wes. He was. I mean, honestly. He was absolutely gorgeous, just majestic. I'll never forget it. Just absolutely a majestic creature. But has anybody ever reported that type of white facial feature to you?
Yeah, they have.
Besides myself.
Yeah, they have.
I've
talked to witnesses that talk about. I just had a gentleman on. I can't remember where he was at, but he was talking about how it had the white patch going down its chest, and that he thought that was kind of weird because it was an auburn colored creature, kind of a reddish brown type creature, but it had this white patch going down. You know, sometimes it depends on some witnesses. They'll say it had like a full beard. Some witnesses will say it had like a goatee. I've talked to witnesses that say that it had no facial hair at all. The canines aren't as out of the ordinary as you would think. A lot of witnesses describe the canines.
That's astounding to me. That really is, because I've never seen any images yet that it actually had canines. So I figured that the one I saw was just extremely rare, you know, just really, really rare. And that's actually astounding. Were the main ones that had canines, when you said that they were aggressive, I mean, did they attack people, or were they more just trying to frighten the people away? What type of general encounters were they?
I would say both. I've had both. I've had where people describe them with canines being very aggressive, throwing stuff. I had one witness on, I can't remember what state it was in, but he was talking about this thing having huge canines, and what it was doing is it was throwing a tantrum. They were hunting an area, and it was throwing a tantrum, and it was grabbing fistfuls of just handfuls of dirt and whatever it could grab, and it was throwing it in the air towards them. And it was just throwing a tantrum. He said it was stomping, it was breaking branches. He said it reminded him of a kid throwing a tantrum, a really bad tantrum is what it reminded him of. And then I've had other witnesses. I've had people who've been attacked by them. I had a guy who was knocked down by one, and he ended up trying to shoot it in the head, and it ended up getting off of him. But he describes it having huge canines. He said it had huge canines. I know one of my military insiders, I ended up taking the show down, but one of my military insiders was attacked by one. It was attacking her dog, and she went out and shot it 5 or 6 times. And it had picked her up, slammed her to the ground, and then basically just turned her into hamburger meat. I mean, it was just beating her nonstop. She was in the hospital for almost a year, and I think she tried to learn how to walk again. But she was describing it having huge canines. And that's one of the things she said. It had huge canines, and it just went crazy. And generally speaking with those, I know Duke has had an encounter. I'm sure you've heard him on the show. His first encounter, he talks about the one coming out and checking them out, sliding down the hill. They were doing snow sliding when I think he's 10, 11 years old, and having this huge creature come out and stare them down. And he describes it having huge canines. And so there's a lot of reports of them with the canines. And that's what I mean. Generally speaking, those types of reports, they aren't really friendly reports, generally speaking.
So it sounds like I was extremely fortunate that you're right. It was probably just mainly more curious if it was going to use me for a snack. I guess maybe I started to stop it from that.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that's kind of on the disgusting part of these creatures is, are there actually reports around Ohio of like missing children that were playing in the backyard in the woods? I mean, do you know of anything like that? I realize that type of data is extremely confidential and stuff, but I was kind of curious. Have you gotten reports like that at all from the northern area of Ohio?
I haven't really looked too much into it. It's kind of a touchy subject,
Correct. I understand.
And so I really haven't looked too much into it. But there is a lot of reports, even around the country, of kids just playing 5, 6, 7 feet away from their parents. Parents turn around, start talking to someone, and then turn back around. The kid's gone. He just vanished. He's nowhere to be found. You can read a lot of those type of reports. And what's interesting is one of the areas in Texas that really fascinates me. If you look it up online, it's called the Missing Texas 40. There's more than 40 people, but they call it the Missing Texas 40. And those people in that area that just vanish and are never heard from again, there's something going on down there, and no one's looking into it. There is absolutely something. If that was a major city, if that was like New York City, and they had all these people come up missing, you would think a serial killer was on the loose. I mean, there would be complete
and no one's looking into it.
and no one's looking into it. But if that many people
Yeah, that's
disappeared in a major
That's very
city,
odd.
there would be complete
Yep.
pandemonium. But no one seems to be looking into it. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I haven't really looked into the missing children. I think in your
Right.
encounter, though, I think if it wanted you, it would have grabbed you. Kind of
As
think
big
it was
as
more.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was more curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, generally all they had to do was just take one step and just stretch his arm out, and I mean, they could have snapped my neck in an instant and picked me up, and poof, I would have been gone forever. And my parents would have never known what happened. I would have just literally disappeared completely, just vanished. And another thing I am really curious about is that something that large, I mean, I'm assuming that you have reports also that these things are that stealthy. I mean, they can actually get that close to people without them realizing or without them hearing them walk up. I mean, I also realize that's according to the data that some of these creatures do have a smell, and this one didn't. I didn't smell anything, but I mean, how could something that large, with that much debris and trees and grass and stuff around, come up on me so quietly? That makes no sense to me.
I don't think that's quite as far out of the ordinary as you would think. I've had cougars come up on me, very large cougars out here in Washington State. When I say large, I mean very large cougars sneak up on us when we were hunting. Never heard them. And, that's after being out in the forest for a couple of weeks. And where you become acclimated, you understand the sounds that are around you. But
Yes,
I've
you
had
do.
very
Yes, you
large
do.
cougars come up on me, and I never saw them. I never heard them until, boom, they're right there. And so I don't think it's that hard for these things to sneak up on people. I think in your situation, you're probably playing, you were focused on what you were doing, and then
Good point.
thank God for that feeling of being watched that we always
Yeah, that
talk
was a
about.
strange feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a very strange feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank God for that, because I think that feeling of being watched protects us in a lot of situations, even when you're in downtown, in your city, whatever city you're closest by. When you have that feeling of being
You gotta
watched,
get sense with it. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. You'll look up and you tend to find out who's staring you down, and I think most people probably aren't paying attention to what's going on. And I'm really curious if your dad ever had a sneaky suspicion there was something going on out there. That's interesting. You guys moved right away, because that kind of tells me, I mean, for him to pick up and move 6 months after your encounter, maybe it was still around the property. Some people are old school like that, though, where they don't want to come out and say, hey, I think there's something weird going on here. They'd rather just kind of look the other way. And I talked to many hunters who've experienced weird things. And when you really start drilling down and ask them questions, you find out really quick they don't really want to talk about it. They just rather forget it.
And that's pretty much the reaction that I had gotten from my father. And like I said, there was a couple strange instances that did happen after that, but I'm really not going to, like I said before, I really won't go into detail. But that's something now. I mean, my father lived to a ripe old age of 88, and he had passed away. But it did, as the years went by, I looked back on this and was like, why exactly did we move 6 months later? And there again, too, with the associations that we had with the church and so forth, how would, you really can't explain that to these type of associations, because they would think you're absolutely insane and pretty much would probably want to throw you into a loony bin. You know what I mean? So how would, even if Dad had encountered it, or Mom, or one of the other family members had encountered it, I doubt very seriously that any of them would have ever mentioned it to any of the other close friends or associates that they knew, because their response would have been completely crazy. You're nuts, you're crazy, and maybe you should go see a doctor. if you understand what I'm saying.
No, I get completely what you mean. And it's interesting. I can think of two encounters I've talked to over the phone, two recent encounters, and it was two Mormons. And I know your dad wasn't Mormon, but the point I'm trying to make is they had probably some of the best encounters I've ever heard, ever. The encounters that they had with these creatures, these two guys, I mean, I was on the edge of my seat listening to them, and I listen to encounters all day, but these guys, I was
Let's
really on
give
the edge of my seat
Far
listening to
West some
encounters.
love.
And when I asked them if they'd come on the show, the answer was no. And I asked them why, and they said, in our religion, people will hear us, they'll think we're nuts. I think they think it's Cain. And then I'm not trying to bash the Mormons by any means, but what I'm trying to say is I think sometimes those outside influences come into play to where it helps us to kind of, not really helps us, but we look the other way because we don't want to be ridiculed. We don't want to be, if the church is your life and you see a Sasquatch, well, that kind of throws everything. I mean, you don't want to mention it at church. You don't want people to think you're nuts. You don't want to, and even when not in church, I mean, if you're running into Sasquatch, you don't want people to think you're nuts anyway when you bring it up. But these things are definitely out there, as you know. I mean, they're out there.
Yes, they are.
And
yes, they are.
It would be nice if there was disclosure. Let's just cut the crap and stop ridiculing people who've seen these things. And let's just, let's get with disclosure. And it would be I know the U.S. government knows these things are in there. Why they are covering up, it's a different story. But it would be nice if they would just come out and say, hey, listen, these things are out there. Just be careful. I know a lot of the researchers think everyone's going to grab their guns and go out there and look for Bigfoot. And I got news for the researchers now. There's people with guns now looking for these things, ready to shoot these things. And so it's just frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. And I know a lot more people have seen these things, experienced these things that you never hear about. And it's frustrating for me because it would just be nice for it to come out.
I agree 100%. I mean, bears and cougars and other animals are out in the woods and they're dangerous, and we know about them, and it's part of nature. So if they would finally acknowledge that these creatures exist, and I mean, to my personal opinion, I think there's a large population of them. I mean, since the encounter, of course, it led me to, okay, I know what I saw. And it's truth and fact, and I wanted to learn after I had the encounter. I wanted to learn as much as I could learn about them. But at that time, there wasn't that much information about them that was out. I think I had picked up a couple books, and then eventually I did see the Patterson Gremlin film and so forth. But it seems like here within about the past 5 to 10 years, a lot of good information and a lot of good data has been coming out about the creatures. And I personally feel that there has to be a large population of them because A, there's so many encounters, and then B, from what I'm understanding, there's so many different types. And then on a personal note, I kind of have thought to myself, well, how would they get around a lot? They're nocturnal, we wouldn't see them, but still, even then, they're so large, how would they get around? And I live in northern Arkansas now, and of course we have hollows and creeks and stuff of that nature, and it just kind of makes sense that these creatures actually use these deep hollows and these streams and these rivers and creeks and stuff basically like a highway, I guess. At night, I mean, they would have access to all kinds of properties and stuff. I mean, like they could come up from the hollow and investigate a home and go down and at nighttime, and you would never know that they even existed. But to me, that makes sense. You know what I mean?
And I tend to agree with you. I think the population's actually growing, and I think that more and more people are running into them. More and more people are having encounters, and it's going to come to a point to where they're going to have to disclose it because there's too many witnesses that have seen them. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of places to hide. There's a lot of places to move around, and people see them all the time. I know here in Washington State, I will say, generally speaking, here in the Pacific Northwest, most encounters happen during the day. You do have your encounters at night, but a lot of encounters happen during the day. It's usually the time between when the sun first comes up and when the sun's starting to set is when people run into them. And that's an interesting note too. And there is even middle of the day encounters where people run into them. So I'm not completely convinced they're only nocturnal. I kind of think that the nocturnal thing is more or less a safety. They can move around at night. Larger ones can move around at night. No one's really going to see them. That's my own theory. It's worth about a penny and a half. So take it, take it as you will.
Sure, sure.
But I appreciate you coming on and sharing the encounter very much, Jonathan. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed reading it, and I really enjoyed having you on the show. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's been a sheer pleasure and an honor, and I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. Until next time, everyone, have a great night. One of my favorite songs from the 80s. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you tonight. Going to be speaking with Justin. And Justin's encounter is interesting. It's like I always tell people, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it. And Justin's going to share his encounter tonight. I thought about having all the guys on from this particular encounter, but then there'd be 5 of us all trying to talk, and I guess maybe if I had like a studio I invited people to, it would definitely be easier to kind of control mics and everything like that. Not that any of that technical stuff you guys care about that, but sometimes it's tough. The more people you get on the show, the harder it is to control who's talking over who. So I invited Justin from this particular encounter. He was out with a bunch of his college buddies and just having fun, going out, quote unquote, looking for Bigfoot. More or less just having fun with his buddies, and then they actually ran into one of the creatures. It's a very interesting encounter. There's a lot of warnings in the encounter. Be prepared when you go out, because you never know what you might run into. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. I'd love to hear about your encounter. I'd love to speak with you. Again, it's wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. If you get a chance, check out the website, sasquatchchronicles.com. Become a member, support the show, get additional shows. I sure appreciate you guys listening tonight. Hope your Sunday night's going well. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Justin to the show. Justin, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Wes. It's good to be here.
And if you would, just kind of start from the beginning. Tell us what you were out doing, and then if you would, just kind of walk us into the encounter.
Sure. So it was a couple of years back, about 3-4 years or so ago. Was in college. A buddy of mine we had done a couple of just different trips. We enjoyed night hiking and going out, and we both were interested in the subject of Bigfoot. I'd been for a long time just kind of doing my own just like side research and stuff. I was in anthropology in college and was really interested in Native American culture, and I studied a lot of those things, and a lot of that in a lot of the cultures and a lot of the places that we were reading on. I would always do side things, and I'd find a lot of different names, a lot of different background stories and things like that. So it was always intriguing to me, like with so many different Native American cultures from like Alaska all the way down to Florida, just had names for it and had stories of it. And it was part. It wasn't just like a folklore. It was part of the wildlife. It was part of the everyday. Sometimes part of just to watch out for, or it might be just something that was just in the forest that they dealt with or avoided. But it was interesting. So like a lot of just different stuff that was intriguing for me and growing up and then into college and stuff. So a buddy of mine, we'd go out we just go out and just see what from amateurs. So we, just from what we'd read or what we'd watch or just from people we know would tell us. So we'd do like knocks or calls, or most of the time nothing. We're just out, and for us it was just good time to hang out. But if anything was to happen, sweet, we're kind of just looking and seeing what we could find if there was anything out there. And, so we into college or so, into like our junior year of college, some people in our group of friends found out we were doing those kind of things, and two of the guys on the hall asked if they could come with us next time we went out. My buddy and I, we had gone out to the Poconos in Pennsylvania a few times. We'd had some ambiguous things. My buddy had a sort of his own experience where he had saw something tear up the side of one of the mountainsides that we were walking through. We were in a valley, and we'd heard some rustling and moving and things like that, but I didn't see anything for that aspect. But he saw something just tear up the side of the hill, and we investigated further. We found some footprints in the snow. They're really hard to make out. There were not definitive toes or anything. It was kind of more of an ambiguous thing. We just kind of took pictures and compared sizes and things like that. So it was, but nothing major. But we had enough that we decided we were going to do the Poconos again, because that's where, if we had any sort of activity, that was someplace that we recognized and knew. So that's kind of what we decided to do. So we took these two guys they talked to us. I had talked to them about Bigfoot, and they were just interested in it, and they were like, yeah, we'll go out. So we decided we'd all go out on it was like a Friday or Saturday night. We went out, drove out from our school to the Poconos area that we had picked out. So we went out there, and we just kind of showed them the ropes. We hiked in, we parked the car, we hiked in a little ways, came up to a valley area that we had been to before, that kind of overlooked kind of a valley, and it was in between some power lines. So it was kind of like a stretch where you could just have some open side and then forest and then more trails. So we just kind of showed them the ropes. We just made a few calls. We listened. We just kind of sat around. We made a couple knocks. We had a really kind of silly moment happen where we were hearing these like pops off in the distance. We weren't quite sure what it was, and it turned out to be firecrackers. And the guys were pretty excited, but it turned out to be nothing. So we kind of laughed that off and continued our night. We just kind of walked the trails, listening, and then probably around like midnight or so, we heard some ATVs coming, and so the sound of ATVs driving up a trail. We kind of panicked, and we're not quite sure. It might have been like state or forest. We just weren't sure, so we kind of just booked it and ran back as fast as we could back to the car. And we kind of being college kids, just kind of took off without really thinking about anything else other than that. But the night was still young. They wanted to stay out. We weren't kind of done. So we had looked at a spot earlier, and we kind of just put it into an old GPS I had, and drove out a little ways past to this area, in the area of like the Bear Creek, where we decided to go. And we kept driving. We found kind of some, using the GPS, we kind of found some like more of the back roads, took some ways in. We kind of got some way out there, a couple miles in, past like maybe 1-2 houses, and that was about it. They were pretty out in rural Pennsylvania. We found a nice area where we just figured we could pull over. We pulled over to the side with some sign that had I think what we basically like a makeup of a trail, but it was pretty much nothing of a trail. And we got out of the car. We just were walking up and down the road a little bit. They wanted to try out a call, so we let them, and we just listened. And we were out there for probably a little while. And Mike and I decided we were just gonna let out one of my favorite calls. One of the calls I've been good at. Like we both took a lot of time on YouTube and just listened to a lot of recordings of just different calls that we had heard from different people that would post them, or just from just different sites and different, like the BFRO or just different websites that had for researching and stuff, the Pennsylvania Project, Bigfoot Project. And so we just would mimic those, where we just find ways of just mimicking them and honing those in. So I let out one of my whoops that we had done. So had Mike. We just listened. We just kind of sat there and listened. Not honestly really expecting to get anything. We just kind of were already out just having a fun guy night and enjoying the time. But this time we got something back. Probably like only a minute or two after the whoops were let out, and it was very clear that it was almost exact same from what we were, which was the thing that struck us the most.
So it was, whatever it was mimicking you.
Yeah, so whatever it was mimicking. So we kind of like, we were able to like distinguish that it wasn't a coyote, it wasn't a dog. It might be another person, because that can't happen and those kind of things. But so we just were, but we were listening. We were kind of, the other guys were kind of pretty excited, because it was like, whoa, this is, you heard something. And I was like, what? And we didn't know what it was. So we decided to do it again, just to see if it was just like kind of our imagination getting the best of us, or if it was something else. So we let it out again. So we let out the same kind of call, and we waited. And sure enough, it happened again, the same one. So one of the guys we had brought along looked over at me and asked if he could do, or kind of like whispered, if he could do like a knock. We had brought some bats. We always carry bats with us and stuff for those kind of things. And we had, heard about those different things, and we didn't know if it was a communication thing or any sort of way. So we just figured, why not? We'll just try it. I mean, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So we just tried. So he let out 2 knocks, just as hard as he could against one of the trees close by. It was a good ring. It had a good solid, crisp sound. We just waited. We just kind of waited. And then it happened again. So this time a knock came back. So for us, it was like, okay, this is either, the real deal or a person, So we kind of just were like, okay, do it again. And so our guy does it again. We wait, and it has it, and then we can hear it. And this time it wasn't so faint. It was a little bit more, you could hear it. It definitely had a little bit more pack to it, the knock that we got back. So we decided to kind of make our way into the woods, just following kind of where we had heard it. We stopped. We made another one. We waited, and then we got a third one back. So we're like, and this time it was definitely the crisp and the loudest we'd heard it, probably the closest we'd heard it. And so we kept going in towards the sound, kind of slowly in. The night was light enough that you didn't need a flashlight, really. We could make our way through, but it was dark enough that like you just had to kind of go slow and make sure you're being safe and stuff. But this was early spring, so like there was leaves, just leftover leaves from the winter on the ground. So it wasn't a ton of foliage, but in Pennsylvania there's always leaves on the ground. We were going through, and just the one thing I do, like we all remember from that night, is just like how much the forest was alive that night. Just remember, like I remember the crickets. I remember hearing an owl or two. I remember even hearing like the raccoons calling, but like you could distinctly hear that kind of like just the nightlife. It was so distinct that night, and like it had been in a couple of different night hikes that we had been on. Just couldn't deny it. So we were hiking. So we were just kind of moving our way slowly in towards kind of where we had heard the sound. And then we just kind of, we did one more knock. We didn't hear anything. Mike let out a short whoop just to see, and we didn't hear anything. There was no sound. There was no response. We just kind of waited and listened. And that's kind of when everything kind of changed. Like we just suddenly just noticed a sudden change in like the forest in the area around us. Like it just went silent. I mean, the whole forest went quiet. Like you could hear a leaf hitting another leaf if it was like dropping from a tree. Like it was so quiet all of a sudden, which really got the hair on back of our neck standing up, or for me at least, on the back of my neck standing up. And we're just listening, and we're just really in that space. Like, okay, like maybe like this is different. This is odd. And that's when I heard the shuffling, this kind of kind of like footsteps kind of thing. Like it would go a couple spaces and then stop, and then and then we'd listen, and then we'd go another couple more paces, and then it would stop. And we were just listening, following as best we can with our eyes and our ears as open as we can to the shuffling. And we kind of pinpointed where we thought the sound was coming from, or this sound was coming from. And I whispered over to Mike and was like, I think we should just throw our flashlights out and just see if it's an animal. Like if it's just an animal or something like that, whatever it is, hopefully we'll just catch it with our lights. So kind of on 3, we kind of all did that kind of silent on 3, and we just lit up the forest. I mean, all of us just had really high LED lumen lights that we had brought, and we were just shining. I mean, that whole area that we had picked just lit up. And we saw trees and we saw bushes. It was like mixedly dense, like dense in parts and then open in others, kind of spaced. Like there were certain places that were kind of dense and there were places that were kind of spaced out in the tree lines. And we're just kind of panning around that little bit of area, and we're looking around. And I remember behind me there was this kind of large rock, and I decided I was going to just kind of hop on the top, just kind of like see if I could look over the brush, maybe whatever it is underneath maybe the brush or lower, or maybe if I get a higher vantage point. I just kind of in my head was just thinking if I could just get higher, I could maybe see something else. So I crawled up on this rock, boulder-esque, and just kept looking, and they were all looking. Everyone was just kind of silently listening and look at the shuffling or footsteps had really just stopped at that point because the lights had come on, and so we were just panning. And it was probably a minute or two, and we didn't really see anything. And I was asking Mike to hold my flashlight so I could get back down from the rock without like tripping or falling or anything. So I knew where I was going to land when I was going to just kind of hop down. And just as I was looking up one more time to like kind of look with the light, and I was coming down from the rock, is when I just saw this like mass, this arm and this leg and this thing go from one tree to the next. And I mean, I remember everything just stopped. Like I was like, holy shit! And like couldn't say, like my heart had gone into my throat, my lungs, like I felt like my lungs had completely deflated. I couldn't breathe. I can just replay it in my head in slow motion over and over and over again. This like arm swinging with a body, just moving from one tree to the next. It was a very short, quick motion. Just remember the hair, the hand, the leg, the butt. Like you could see, like you could actually like see a butt, and you could see like a foot and a leg. So that's really what I got. Like there was no head. I really saw like probably like the back of the head, like no face or anything like that. No real like chest or anything. Most of that had already must have already gone past like into the next tree. But I just remember that arm like just swinging to go behind the tree, and the leg stepping behind the tree, and that whole like just kind of back.
How big do you think the thing was? I mean, how tall?
I would say, because I'm 6 foot tall, and I was getting down from the rock, and the rock probably gave me like another like couple inches, 5 maybe. So, and I think at that point when I was getting down from the rock, I was level with its head. So I would put it probably at like, I don't know, 6'5", 6'5", 6'7", I would say. That's the rough estimate I would probably give it. It wasn't massive. Like, I don't remember it being massive. I actually remember it kind of being like a little on the skinnier side, honestly. Like I saw that, like you could see through the hair, like a little bit of the muscle. Because distance-wise, this was probably 25 yards, maybe 30, like 25, 30 yards away. And just like the hair was long, but it was like not patchy, but enough where you could like see almost like the skin underneath the hair, if that makes sense. Like underneath with the hand, like you could see where like there wasn't hair in the hand and there wasn't hair in the foot, if that makes sense. And there was like hair things in the leg, like really, really hairy leg, but kind of make out like some of the skin. So that's like kind of like what I would say I saw. And the hair was definitely long, but it definitely had shorter aspects. Like it was longer up top, and it kind of got shorter as it progressed down, like part of the arm and part of the back into like the butt area, and then like part of the leg into the foot area was definitely where it was like shorter, and then everything else was longer, I guess you could say.
So what's going through your mind at this point? You see this thing, you're climbing down from the rock. What's going through your mind at this point? Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, it's like holy crap. I mean, and part of my mind is like, this isn't real. Like, there's no way there's no way that this could possibly happen. This is a fluke. This is an accident. There's no way. Like I've always heard stories. I've always read things about it. I've seen plenty of videos. I've watched the Patty footage over and over and over again, and like detail and analysis. I mean, like, and it just didn't comprehend, if that makes sense. Like, it was almost like I'm scared out of my mind, but at the same time, I want to know what the heck that thing is, if that makes sense.
How did it compare to the Patterson-Gimlin film from what you saw? I mean, what was it comparable to what you saw? Or?
Like I said, it was skinnier. It was definitely like skinnier, it seemed, than Patty. Like Patty just seems a little thicker, if that makes sense. It just seemed a little bit skinnier. But everything else, like the way that the brief area of like the head from like what I drew, like I'm really glad I just drew everything, because it kind of brought back things that I didn't even think about. But definitely, like, there really wasn't a neck. There really wasn't, like, I could tell, at least there wasn't really much of like a neck. Like, you just basically arm swing, like back of head. And then, yeah, I just remember it, like, you could see the muscle tone, like in the leg and in the arm. But I would say the main difference I would see in the Patty film is that it just was a little skinnier, just smaller, just kind of that kind of thing. Like, that's what it just seemed like. If I could compare it to that, I would say that's really what I would describe.
And so what happens next?
Mike is looking at, like, we're all looking in that direction. I said, I saw something. I was like, I can barely make it out, but I'm trying to tell the guys, like, there, it's in that tree. It's that tree. It's that tree. It's that tree kind of thing. Like, and one of the guys wants to get a different angle on it. He, without really saying much, he just turns on kind of his phone, looks at, like, says, like, turn on your phone. And he's like, I'm just going to go here, but I'm going to keep my phone on, and I'm just going to try to see if I can get a different angle on it. Really, before we can even say anything, he's kind of already doing it. That's kind of how this kid is. He was very impulsive. He didn't. No one else really, I don't think, saw what I saw. Like, they were just like, you saw it, so they're all now wanting to, like, go forward and see this thing. And we're talking about, like, just this is like kind of like, I look back and this is the stupidest college moment, kind of like these kids. Mike is armed with, like, this crazy, like, hatchet sucker. We got bats and a couple knives. Like, we're not prepared for anything like that, but they want to see it. And I'm kind of in the same place, like, adrenaline's pumping through my body, and I need to see this thing again. Like, I need to know that I was, like, it wasn't my imagination. It wasn't my imagination. I saw something actually in the flesh. And so we're making our way. We're inching. I mean, it feels like an eternity, and we're probably just inching piece by piece by piece. And it's probably only a few minutes, but I mean, it just felt like forever. So we're inching closer and closer to this tree. And the only thought that's going through my head is either this thing is going to bolt and we're all going to see it, or we're gonna come on around this tree and it's gonna be right there and we're still gonna see it. And at that point, I don't know what we would do at that point. Yeah. So we're just, I don't know. So, like, we're all kind of close, shoulders to shoulders, and we're moving forward closer and closer and closer. And I remember this is like kind of that moment where kind of everything changes. I hear, like, either just like a grunt or a but also like a snap of a tree or a snap of a branch. Like, when I've talked to my buddies, that's what also they remember. They just remember this loud snap to our, like, completely to our 9 o'clock, like totally to our left to our 9 o'clock. And just instinctually, we all pan our flashlights to where we heard the sound. And at that point, I don't think any of us were thinking anymore. We just kind of were all on this, like our sound sensories, like whatever our senses are picking up, that's where we're just kind of going. And I remember panning my flashlight to the left with at least Mike, maybe the other Josh or the other guy, and there are these eyes. I mean, he just panned them around. It's just like eye shine. And this was much higher off the ground than the other ones. I would say the eyes were probably they were small. They weren't huge, but they were enough that would grab your attention. Probably like greenish yellow, I would say, somewhere in that vicinity of color. And it was high off the ground. I mean, I was using a branch that was on the side of this large tree, kind of to scale it. And so we just kind of, I said, eye shine. Mike was saying eye shine. I'm like, do you see it? He sees it. And so in my head, I'm just saying, okay, like there's a branch there. It could be a possum. It could be a raccoon. It could be an owl. Like there's a branch there. Let's try to be like, we're all kind of on edge. Let's just, in my head, I'm kind of just trying to process and figure out, like, maybe let's just try to keep it out. But then that's when basically the whole thing or body, like you can just, where the eyes move go behind the tree without bouncing or moving. Like if an animal's moving across a tree, or like a raccoon or a possum or something like that, like they might move, but you'll see like a little bit of like the bobbing, or you'll see something like where they might turn their head briefly to look where they're going and then turn back to look at you.
Now, when you guys are shining the lights on it, are you only seeing the eye shine at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just glued on these eyes. I mean, at just the whole, it's almost as if our flashlights just get sucked into this darkness. I mean, just this darkness just is enveloping our flashlights, but just the eyes are there. And I don't know if it's just because that's what we're all of us are on high alert. We're just glued to these eyes. But that's all I remember. There's nothing. I just remember like a black mass.
You like that slip that all of us
like
are high?
Darkness. And it's odd because like there was light. I mean, there was like good stars and things like that. Like you would think,
oh man, we're
like
getting
there would be something
around.
more, but I mean, that's just, I think the scariest part about it is that it was just like our flashlights just were enveloped in this black, I don't know, just darkness. And then there were these two eyes, these like glowing green yellow eyes just staring back at us. And they're moving like behind the tree, then poking back out, like leaning out. And then it would go back behind the tree. Those eyes would go back behind the tree, and then it would poke back out, like almost like not like just kind of leaning out. And we were just fixed, and I was just fixed on these eyes. And the crazier thing, I think that changed the game for me, that it wasn't like an animal that could be perched on the tree, is that it went to the other side of the tree, and then the eyes moved from one tree to the next, and those eyes never stopped looking at us. It floated. It was almost as if those eyes were just floating. Like there was no, it was as if like the eyes were just floating from one tree to the next, and it would go behind the tree, and then it would look out and peek around, and then go back behind the tree, and then it would peek out, and then it would go to the next tree over to the right from our left. And they just floated. I mean, we just followed them for three more trees of just, and we have completely forgotten about what I saw that was to our now, like 12 o'clock. Still be, and it's the craziest thing. Like, it's almost like we were just in this trance, like just this, our heart, like my heart is racing. I'm just fixed on these eyes, going from one tree to the next tree to the next tree until finally it's just gone. I mean, the tree, they go behind one tree and then it doesn't peek back out, and we're just glued to this tree waiting and waiting and waiting. And it felt like forever. It was probably only like a minute or two, but it felt like forever in this moment that we're in. And then just as if nothing had happened, the forest just comes back to life. We hear the crickets slowly start to come back. You hear just the sound of just animals again. You hear the sound of an owl again, like just as if like nothing had happened. They're just like, it just slowly, almost like someone had turn the volume back up on a radio to like full from like mute or from 0 to 20. Like it just like you just could hear everything come back to life, and we just kind of almost like snapped out of it. It was almost like we snapped out of it at that point, and we're like, what? And then we just booked it back to the car. We weren't thinking about anything else. We just like all of us just instinctually ran back to the car. I don't even know when our buddy who had like gone off to like get a better view at some point, like he was next to us staring at the eyes too. But we all four of us, we just ran back to the car. We got in the car, just completely silent. I had this like weird like monster movie fear suddenly that I was going to turn on the car and the lights were going to come on. There was going to be this monster just staring at us from like from the high beams that we turned on from the car or whatever, if that makes sense. But like just on high edge. Like I was just like, what am I like? Are they just going to be at the car? Like, are we just going to have a hand come through or something at us? I just didn't know when I got in the car, and we just sat there. I mean, I don't think we turned on the car and it just sat there. I mean, I think all of us just sat there in silence. Didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to think. I finally just put the car into drive, and we just started driving back down the road we had come from, and I think like it was a couple hours. We had at least a 2 or 3 hour drive back to the college. But I mean, I think it wasn't until like, I don't know, an hour after the drive, we started kind of like talking about what like one of the guys pitched up like, okay, what the heck just happened? I don't know, man. Like, and we were talking about the different things. Like I was telling them what I saw, and they were telling me what they saw, and I was talking about the eyes, and we're talking about like, do you see like anything else other than that, and just kind of going from there. And I don't remember if it was Mike, I don't remember if it was one of the other guys, but someone just basically said like, no one's going to believe us. And it was just kind of like, then everyone just kind of was silent again. Like I was like, yep, yeah, there's no way anyone's going to believe us, kind of thing. But it was solidifying because at least the four of us knew that like we were coming out of this at least in one piece, but also coming out of this like knowing that no matter what it was going to be. And so we got back to college, and everyone kind of went their separate ways to their rooms. I tried to sleep. I think I slept a little bit, and then it was the next day. And some people who had heard about us had gone. They're like, so did you see anything? And like kind of like joking around, and it was really hard to kind of say yeah or no. It was, I don't mind talking to people about it. Like if they want to, I'm really open. Like I really don't mind. I think it's something that is real, and I know it's real. And if people want to have conversation with me about it, I'm willing to talk. And if they have questions, I'll do my best. Or if I don't know, I'll point them in the right direction or say I don't know. And I mean, it's just one of those things that I think if people aren't talking about it, it's not really going to get resolved or get changed.
I tend to agree with you on that. I think that if people have encounters, they should come forward. And, like I said, be careful what you wish for. You can go out and find these things. It's not impossible to find them. And sometimes when you're actually looking for them, you do find them. Probably with all the noise and everything you guys were making, it probably decided to come in and check you guys out, see what you guys were doing, and then it backed away. And, the behavior is interesting. I've noticed when there's 2 or more people, these things tend not to, most of the time, tend not to be quite as aggressive. If there's a group of people, if there's just one, it's usually a different story. But if there's a group like you guys, it shows you how smart they are. They're not stupid. They're not going to pick a fight that they could potentially lose. Now, could it go through and could have slaughtered all 4 of you? Absolutely. But it might have got hurt in that process. I mean, you guys are carrying weapons. I realize they're not guns, but you guys are carrying weapons, and something comes at you, and you're going to start, chopping away. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, that's what my buddy swears he'll never go out in the woods again without a gun. I'm pretty darn close. Like I love the outdoors. I love hiking. I've gone multiple camping trips. I live in Maine now, and I love Maine, and Maine is gorgeous. And been out camping, but even then, I'll carry. I'll just in quiet. I won't tell anyone, but it's just kind of my way of keeping my conscience, but also everyone around me safe, whether it's family or friends. It's kind of my silent thing. I definitely, since I've been out in the woods and since that experience, I've definitely been checking my six more and been watching around and just kind of being more self-aware of things. But I've definitely tried not to let it stop me from going out and doing things like, whether it's hiking or camping or hunting or doing whatever it is. I mean, like, it's just, I don't want it to stop me from being that place, but I also want to, it's a sobering thing too, just to kind of,
to realize these things are real.
Yeah, really, to kind of definitively, I always, that belief then becoming more of like a reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You always kind of, some people I've heard, they assume that these things are out there, or they believe that these things are out there. But once you see them, it's completely different. It becomes real. It gets real really quick. If that thing would have gotten aggressive, it could have gotten real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think it's a scary thing that we all look about. Like, it's kind of the situation that it could have gone the other way, and very thankful it didn't. And we're all very thankful it didn't. But it definitely is fuel. It's like that weird, sick obsession that comes with it, though. Like, I didn't fully, like, I feel like I didn't entirely, I saw one and I've seen different things, but like, you almost like want more to like solidify it. You almost want to do it again. And we did. I mean, I think a month or two later, we tried to find a similar spot and go out there, and nothing. We didn't get anything that time, and we tried a different spot, and almost got shot by rednecks. I mean, like but we just kind of, and things have changed. We've all graduated out and we've moved in our separate ways. But we always keep in touch and get together for different activities or trips. But I mean, we always come back to like talking about that. Like, remember that time? And then we just kind of like, yeah. And then we just kind of sit in it.
Yeah. You guys will be tied to the hip until you guys die. It's something all of you experienced. I think it's interesting too, their behavior, which I always find fascinating. I almost think that these things don't realize we as humans struggle to see at night. We don't have, and when I say that, I mean, like, we don't have night vision like a lot of predators do.
Yeah.
And I don't think that these things realize that. I don't think they realize we really can't see that well at night. And, it's interesting, its behavior, how it kind of cautiously looked around the tree, kind of went back. It didn't really expose itself. It didn't jump out in the open at you guys, or could have probably turned its head, crawled down and crawled away, but it's still observing you guys. And I just think that behavior is fascinating.
Oh, agreed. I think, and it's, I don't know if it was like how intense our flashlights were or like that kind of thing too. Like, but I have no idea. I agree. I think in reading, and I've also, listening to your show and listening to other people's encounters and stories and stuff, and the behavior that they exhibit, is just, I think, something that's it's hard for us to wrap our minds around, especially for me, even like I've been a lover of like animals and studying. Like, I was supposed to go to college for zoology and kind of took a different path, but like I've always been fascinated with animals and behavior and what goes on. This is just a whole nother, just seems like a whole nother can of worms. Like, it doesn't quite fit into any specific, I don't know, like category. Like, you can't just like kind of, you can't just put it, okay, this is like, it's just like bears, you can put it right next to like the bears. Okay, it's omnivore, it has a hibernation or a hiking thing. Oh, maybe it's more like maybe a wolf or a cougar where it's loner and it's stalks alone and works together. Oh no, it's a family group. Okay, maybe it's in more of the ape line. We can put it in like ape behavior and stuff, but more from a North American standpoint. So it's like really hard to like put it in one category.
It's very hard to place it. It's very, very hard to place it. Sometimes they act like chimps. Sometimes they act like apes. Sometimes they act like people.
Yeah.
And it's odd because there's not a whole lot of creatures you can put into that category. I mean, I guess great apes can act like people. Mm-hmm. They will show human-like traits. But with these things, I mean, it's so odd. And then you get in different parts of, I know, like here in the United States, you get in different parts of it, and their behavior is night and day. Either they're more aggressive or they're more pissed off in one area. And then, especially on the East Coast, you hear more not quite as aggressive type behaviors. And the other thing, too, is a lot of people describe the proportions, not always, but not, I would say, more human-like in proportion. And when I say that, like out here in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of people will say, well, their arms were, hanging down past the knees or like an ape.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But sometimes out on the East Coast, again, not always, sometimes you get those weird reports where it's like, no, it was kind of proportioned like a person. I mean, it didn't move like a person. That could be people's perspective too, but with all of your anthropology classes, what do you think this thing is? I mean, I know you're saying it's hard to place it somewhere, but where would you place it? What do you think this thing is?
So, completely from looking at like the kind of the Native American like kind of aspects, they a lot of times they see it very much like as another animal in the forest, or as another creature of the night, or a creature that moves around. And sometimes you see it as like a giant or a forest person like aspects, or attributing that. And that's a lot of that, I think, with how we as humans interpret to animals and we put ourselves in that aspect, in that category. I think I would definitely lean more, honestly, to more of like a great ape, or like an ape that crafts, not in the sense of Gigantopithecus, but possibly something that in that lineage divulged and came across the land bridge and those kind of things. But if it happened to be something in the homogeneous area, and like with some form of thing like a Heidelbergensis or something like that, like the tall man, or something similar to that, it wouldn't surprise me. But I definitely, honestly, like more move over. I would say ape. I would say more ape, just with behavior and the stories that I've heard and listened to and accounts, and then also just watching. But they're definitely smart. I mean, they definitely don't fit into all the categories. There's definitely things that make them different, like language aspects, like listening to the Sierra sound and listening to different chatter and that kind of stuff that goes on too. Like there's definitely, like, if you listen to chimps, like chimps have chatter. Like chimps will, have those chattering things also amongst themselves too. But it definitely is more developed. Maybe that's a better word to describe it.
I would agree with you on that. I definitely agree with you on that.
And I think that's really where it comes into. I think if it is, it's just more, it's more developed, better at what they do. I saw, forget who did it, but they did a really good job of like explaining gigantism in North America over during the Great Land Bridge, and then describing all the different animals that came over, like from Asia to North America. And because of the lack of predators, prey got bigger, and because prey got bigger, predators got bigger. So you look at like the lions that were here over during the ice age, and certain things were huge. Same thing with like the flat-nosed bear. That was the flat-nosed cave bear. They found skulls and things in Alaska that were, twice the size of Kodiak. I mean, and then we also have like woolly mammoths and stuff like that. So he had a really interesting theory on like some of the apes that might have come over, and how they might have been able to develop and get better at hiding and better at maneuvering and avoiding predators and avoid. avoiding things and being able to hunt and do things, but also being able to like escape and maneuver and get better. I mean, if they've been here for as long as the tribes and different stories and things that have dated back as far as it goes and as far as writing has gone, and even like cave paintings and those things that we've seen, I mean, they've had a long time to figure things out and make living and survival key.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. It's hard to place these things. It really is hard to place them. I'm with you on that. When you hear about other people's encounters and you really start looking into this, I mean, even the tracks that they leave, the feet, are very human-like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like the biggest loop.
Yeah, and you look at it and you're just like, this does not make sense. Like, this thing should not exist. That's why I don't really jump on science too much when they don't come open arms looking into this subject, because even for people in this subject, it doesn't make sense. This thing really shouldn't exist. Mm-hmm. And what it is, I couldn't really tell. I mean, like I always say, I don't have one in my garage I'm studying, but it's really hard to know where exactly to place this thing in our world. And it's interesting too when you start looking at like the Chinese urine or Yowie in the outback, and
yep, and then the Yeti in Nepal, and the Iranian Pendek in India, on the India's border. So they got different terms and descriptions for them. Like some of them have the differences, but it's also looks like it's like environment too. It seems like also like the environment shapes
absolutely
how they developed or how they work with those kind of things. Like for Yeti, you see it more in the mountainous terrain, so it's bigger, it's muscular, it has kind of a size to it, so it can move through the snow and maneuver and things like that. With the Orang Pendek in the jungles, it's kind of smaller, but still has that kind of strength and maneuverability to get around it. Like, so you just kind of see that with the different descriptions you see too.
Yeah, and even here in the United States, you know, in more remote areas, you hear, like out here in the Pacific Northwest, they seem to be bigger. Even up in Canada, I had a guy that I'm going to try and get on the show who had an encounter, and he's talking about, I think it was 20 or 21-inch tracks. I'll have to go back and look at the thing he sent me, and he casted them, and they're good they're really good tracks. And he was talking about his encounter, but he was talking about how physically large this thing was. I think it was like 9.5 feet tall, and he was in shock. He just couldn't believe how big this thing was. But I tell you this to make my point is, it seems like you get into more remote mountainous regions here in the Pacific North or in the United States, and they tend to be larger, or the reports you get from people that they're larger. I know it wasn't easy for you coming on the show. I really do appreciate you taking the time to tell the encounter. I know you've been kind of holding it, not really wanting to come on, and you know, like most witnesses, it's tough to get them to come on, but I really do appreciate you taking the time to come on and share the encounter.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I think if more people start, you know, talking about it and having those kind of conversations, it'll create more dialogue for people that might not want to hear it, or might be, you know, on edge, but want to hear more about it and actually have good dialogue. I think the more we talk about it, I think that's going to honestly be the key, because we've got plenty of footprints, we've got plenty of everything out, like hair and fecal and every saliva. People have got plenty of other things, but it's the witnesses and the things that people have seen that I think are the insurmountable evidence that really point to this. This really is hard pressed to be a hoax.
No, you're right. And be careful what you wish for. If you go out looking, you might run into it, you know?
Yeah, definitely holding back on what I do when I'm out there and who I'm with and stuff. But I always have my eye open, trying to find, and anytime videos come out, I try to like just look and see. Just that kind of thing. I think it's more of for now, and what I think is it's the itch on my back is just like the do I really want to have seen a face? Because I've heard plenty of stories of people have seen them and it's just different descriptions and things, or like a full body, like seeing one in the daytime or one at like night, but it's like really up close. It's like, do I really want that? I don't know. So it's like that kind of those aspects. I don't know if I really want to, but I think I'd rather be prepared for anything than not to be.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with going out again and looking. I mean, I think most people have an encounter, even a scary encounter. Once time helps heal things, you almost kind of want to go back and go, God, I want to see that again. Did that really happen? Did I really experience that? it seems like a dream when you go back and think about your own encounter,
Yeah, definitely. I've been to now that I live in Maine, I've gone to the International Cryptozoology Museum that Lauren Coleman, I don't know if you know who Lauren Coleman is, but cryptozoologist, I got to meet him in person with actually my buddy Mike. We actually went together to this place just because it was fun and we were excited, and we actually got to meet him and talk to him, and he got to show us like the footprints that have been taken, casted in Maine, and showing us like the different sightings that have been going on in Maine, and if we ever wanted to look, these are the places to check out. And then he also was the one that encouraged us to draw and like write our encounters down. He really encouraged us to like really make that, because like I said, that kind of makes it solidifies and brings back memories that you might not even have remembered. And it did, honestly, for drawing. I think that's really the thing that like freaked me out the most, was when I started drawing. It's not great. I'm not a great artist, but like it still brought back like kind of those sudden memories, and it kind of became more solidified, I think, in my mind, of what it was. But yeah, definitely keeping an eye out. Catan's got places. And every time I go out to Washington, I'm always like itching to get out there and hiking and stuff. I got family out there, and getting out in Washington's always a fun place.
Keep me up to date, will you? Let me know if anything else happens, or if you're out there and something else happens. Please keep me up to date. And thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. I'll send you an email or something.
Thanks, Justin. And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. Wes@SasquatchChronicles.com. If you get a chance, check out the website, SasquatchChronicles.com. Become a member, help support the show. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I will see you guys next time. At night is what it is. I'll be bringing Dan on, who is a current law enforcement officer, and he had shared with me a trail cam video that was taken, and it's a very interesting video. We'll discuss it tonight. If you get a chance, go to SasquatchChronicles.com, and it will be underneath this episode. I'll post the video, but it's a very interesting trail cam video. And he kind of explains, the videos, they only go for 5 or 10 seconds long because they're trying to catch drug runners coming through the area, and they don't want to spend time having guys go out there every week, replace SD cards. So they leave them up, have them run short. But it's very interesting. When I look at it, some people might disagree. It kind of has an orangutan type look to it. But it had thrown the trail cam off the tree, and then it appears to be burying it with leaves. I mean, it's not concrete evidence by any means, but it's very interesting to look at. And he'll also be sharing with us some of his encounters. I'll also be welcoming Ryan to the show. Ryan is a former law enforcement officer. And, it was really interesting to speak with Ryan when him and I spoke on the phone. He was talking about when you call the police department and you say you've seen Bigfoot or a UFO, what used to happen back then. You'll want to stay tuned for that. It's very, very interesting. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@SasquatchChronicles.com. And again, if you get a chance, check out the website, SasquatchChronicles.com. Right around the beginning of September, we'll have merchandise up on the website. Beanies, baseball tees, t-shirts, all kinds of cool stuff. So if you get a chance, check that out. I'll let you know as soon as it becomes available. Pick yourself up something nice. It's great gear. I wear it. I actually wear it all the time. And it's not just because my laundry's not done. I actually enjoy the gear. And so if you get a chance, check that out right around September 1st. Let's jump into it tonight. I want to welcome Ryan to the show. Ryan, thanks for coming on, brother.
Sure, man. Looking forward to it.
And if you would, I know you've had, you're a truck driver and, ex-military, you've been in law enforcement. You've done a lot of different things throughout your life. Having kind of a logical, I hate to say logical type career, what got you interested into Sasquatch?
Well, it's been a hobby of mine since I was a kid, in fact. I'm not really sure what started me. It might have been the legend of Boiguh Creek when I was quite small. Saw that at the drive-in with my mother. I remember being terrified by it. And, of course, there was In Search Of. And I've just had an interest in it most of my life, as well as other things of that nature, the paranormal and whatnot. As I've gotten older here, it's become more of an obsession since I've gotten to know other people interested in it. I've actually gone out and done some research in the field.
And tell us about your experiences going out there in the field. I know I'm going to be playing Aurora you sent me here that you captured out there in Arizona, but if you would, just kind of talk about some of your experiences out there.
Well, like I said, I pretty recently got to go out with a fellow that invited me to go out. He has a research group in the Arizona Monkey on Rim area, and met him online 3-4 years ago. He invited me out with him to check out what he said was a hot spot, and it wound up being a hot spot. Some other researchers are in that area. It's the Tonto National Forest near the Sitgreaves National Forest and the White River Apache area reservation of the Monkey on Rim in Arizona. And it's a forested, rocky, mountainous area, unlike a lot of people believe Arizona is all desert and cactus. Nothing like that. It's very squatchy. I hate to use that term, but it is. I only went out with him a handful of times, and due to personal differences, I will no longer go out there with him. However, it is a good spot. Our first night out, we got that audio that you're about to play. We found suspected footprints. That was in 2014. We found some footprints. Nothing worth casting because the ground's so hard and dry, but good 17, 18-inch tracks going up a steep embankment with 5-foot spread. I was raised hunting. I used to be an avid hunter. I'm not anymore. I'm familiar with deer tracks and the normal sign of animals in the woods. And this was something to bipedal for sure. That was earlier in the day. This guy that I was with, he had all the equipment. He had the parabolic gears, the recording equipment. He was kind of a technical guru. He was good with cameras. He's been researching the area for quite a number of years. Later that night, the first night there, we set up the recording equipment, and before we got it started, I thought I heard in the distance a roar or a yell, and it just didn't sound right to me. It sounded definitely abnormal, and I told him, hey, get that turned on. I heard something, and not even a few minutes later, it did it again. And it wasn't for a few days later after we listened to it, cleaned up and on a stereo that we realized what we had. Now, that was right about dark that night, and the rest of the night we didn't hear that anymore. However, we did have some strange things happen. I had set up jingle bells on the fishing line all around the camp perimeter earlier in the day. Listening to the playback later the next day, we heard something playing with these jingle bells, like something was just tinkering with them. I had them set up in such a way that if something would have walked into the area, it would have, if it hadn't seen them, it would have set them off. It would have caught them around them, wrapped around them, hopefully, is what I was hoping. And we would have really heard it. But something with intelligence snuck up to them and played with them. It was funny, almost like a kid playing with them. We heard it later. I didn't hear it that night, even with the parabolic gears. We had footsteps in and around the campsite in the thick brush, just out of sight, out of the campfire. That first night, that was pretty much it. And I'll tell you, when the sun goes down in the Monkey on Rim, the whole environment changes. It gets scary. And as I said, I was an avid hunter years ago. I no longer hunt, but I love the woods, and I'm good in the woods. I've always had good instincts. There was an uneasiness out there, like being watched or, just a guttural fear I had. And I didn't feel comfortable leaving the campsite. And for me, being prior military and former law enforcement, I take pride in having guts. And that changes out there, really did, especially with all I know anymore from the research I've done. But anyhow, that was the first night out there. Now, the last time we were out was just this past May, and we had an interesting event take place. We didn't hear any yells or roars, but we heard twice through the night, at midnight, we heard an infant screaming and wailing. Like an infant. I don't mean a toddler. I mean like a 1-month-old baby. And anybody that has kids knows what a colicky baby sounds like. Now, there's people that camp in the area, and I wouldn't put it past somebody to take their kid out there, but it was cold out. It wasn't really camping weather. And plus, we had the parabolic ears. We could not hear any other voices or a mother trying to coo her child. It was eerie. And not only that, it seemed to move through the trees from one direction out above us and then behind us within a matter of 2 minutes. Now, we heard that at midnight, and then we heard it about 3 in the morning, and it went on each time for a few minutes each time. Now, it was about 3 in the morning when it seemed to move around us, and I don't think it was a babe, but it sounded just like a babe.
That's interesting.
And I've read stories where other researchers have said they mimic children and infants. Now, I know cougars and bobcats can make a sound like a baby, but this was identical to it. You asked what else we found out there. We found the tracks. We found what looked like there was a boulder that sits up above where the campsite was, way up on the bridge that I found earlier in the day with moss on it. And you could just see the impression of about a 3-foot round sheet where something has been wearing that moss off, sitting there watching down there at the valley. And that was right above where we saw them tracks going up the steep embankment with a 5-foot spread. You know, I'm speculating, and I can't say for sure, but it leaves a lot to the imagination. The sightings that have been in that area, some of the documented sightings of a very large creature.
That whole area is pretty well known for being a hot spot. Let me play this roar. I want to get your take on what was going through your head when you heard this. Here's the roar, and it's looped 5 times. What was going through your mind when you heard that?
When I first heard it, before we turned on the parabolic gear, like I said, we were just getting set up to start recording. I heard it with my ear, and it was pretty far off, and I knew it was something odd, but I wasn't sure what I heard. And we turned on the recorder, and we got it the second time it did it. And it wasn't for a few days after when he had listened to it on his equipment at home, and then he sent it to me, and I put earbuds on and really got a good listen to it. And it sounded to me, at that time, my jaw about hit the floor, because at first it sounds like a person starting to yell, but then it gets so deep at the end of it that there's no way a man could do that. Somebody with very large lung capacity, you know, I can't say for sure what it is, but I can say I don't believe it's a human, and I know it's not a bear. And, of course, we had it sent off to another individual.
What's up, guys? Guess what we're about to do? New pet came out, Tobert. And I'm interested in messing around with him mainly because he's got a couple different upgrade paths. So we're gonna roll some boxes right now. I'm gonna kick off and get started here. Let's do this. Five. Ten. $15. 20. 30. 25. $30. $31. I closed the box too damn quick. Tobert. At 31 boxes. So I'm kind of curious to see the upgrade paths for Tobert that I've heard exist, and we'll probably get a chance to do a couple upgrades because we've got some pets in those boxes. Opening 30 boxes gave us some pet goo, so let's take a look at Tobert and his paths here. Yeah, 61.5 when you get hit. That's just incredible for a tank, right? And I don't know what it costs, but I wonder what the Reforge costs. I wonder what the Reforge costs. You guys want to try? You guys want to see what the Reforge looks like? I'm gonna go ahead and put 1 point into everything, and I want to see what the Reforge looks like. I'm hoping it doesn't take pet goo to Reforge. I'm hoping it's like everything else out there. Nice. And yes, the Reforge is done with epic mats and gold. So if you want to Reforge to a when you get hit pet, it takes 50k gold and 2 epic mats. So what's cool about Tobert is he's a super OP, and you could see him here compared against Loveboy that I have equipped. 61.5% chance when you get hit. Now if you look at him currently, right now he's at 30.75 for everything. Per turn, get hit, hit an enemy. Now, notice his amounts are pretty low, but pretty damn interesting. I think for a tank, it's going to be pretty interesting. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As you could tell, it's live. I'm constantly doing live streams, and in those streams we do raffles of high-level friends that anybody could win, so be sure to subscribe, and there's a Discord link down below. Click in and join that Discord, and you can get more information about the streams, and a bunch of other high-level players are in there chatting. Take care, guys. Well, that's cool. Now I kind of want to use them. Although I really love my +4 Loveboy. Gotta tell you. But we're gonna use some. Tobert. Make sure I don't grind up any of my goodies here. Okay, well, let's get back to our Sasquatch Chronicles, man. Hope you guys like that box opening live. You were permanently burned in the video.
I don't know if we can say them on the air. My jaw about it before, because at first it sounds like a person starting to yell, but then it gets so deep at the end of it that there's no way man could do that. Somebody with very large lung capacity, you know, I can't say for sure what it is, but I can say I don't believe it's a human, and I know it's not a bear. And of course we had it sent off to another individual. I don't know if we can say them on the air or not. You know who I'm talking about, who put the spectrogram to it and compared it to other.
Who's that?
David Ellis with the Olympic Project.
Oh, yeah, David. Yeah, David's really good. That's who I send my stuff to, is David Ellis over at the Olympic Project.
Well, that's who looped that and cleaned it up the second time. Now, the guy that I was going out there with, he did it with his equipment, but he wasn't convinced of anything. I talked to a mutual friend of David Ellis's that's friends with me on Facebook, and her name's Julie. She sent it on to David Ellis, and then he gave it the works. He put the spectrogram to it and compared it to other known animals. And, well, you read the email I think that he sent me. He felt that it definitely was of interest, and it matched other suspected Sasquatch sounds that they had on file. And it didn't match up to any known animals in a spectrogram way. And I'm not a spectrogram guy. I really don't know much about all that as far as the decibels and where it's at. But
yeah, basically what he's saying is if there's like a bear has a certain signature.
Zero is no longer playing, so the reason Zero's not in K is we need active players grinding. So Zero's actually in a guild I made called KZZZ. It's just for basically to gain another 20 friend slots, and I'll be raffling some slots in that guild, or I'm not really sure yet, but I'll probably be doing something with those slots. Maybe, I don't know, maybe something like use it as a competition. Maybe the lowest 2 guys get booted or something, and we just keep replacing.
A wolf has a certain signature, and he's got a library of all the animals. He'll come back and tell you, yeah, that was a bear, that was a wolf, or he'll come back and tell you he doesn't know. But he actually uses a library of sounds.
Right, exactly. And he sent me that information, and I reviewed it. I was happy with it. I know it's not concrete evidence, but to me it is. And, you know, being my first night out with a real researcher, I was happy with it. So I thought your listeners would like it.
Yeah, no, I hope they do. I enjoyed listening to it. Why do you think they're in the area? Why do you think that they're in that particular area?
Well, my personal opinion on it, and though I just recently got to go to the field, I've been into this subject for a long time, and I've read a lot about it, and I've listened to a lot of eyewitness encounters, even before I started listening to your show. And my guess is that there's a lot of them, and they're everywhere. And I think there's different types. And looking back in hindsight, as a kid growing up hunting in western Pennsylvania, I look back on some incidents that happened at that time that I didn't know at the time was Sasquatch activity, and I think now they were. Everything from stick structures to the voices you can't make out just over the ridge line and areas I hunted in for years that I knew everybody that hunted there. Usually when there was people down the ridge or at the hunting camp and I was up on the mountain, you could hear what they were saying. So I've had that happen a few times. Marvelous, fantastic stick structures where logs were balanced on each other and saplings were twisted together and bent over. I remember coming across that a few times as a younger man, thinking, how did somebody do this? Now, there hadn't been men up here doing this, and I knew full well they didn't. Now, all these years later, knowing what I know, I just think they're everywhere, Wes, and, a lot of places. And anywhere that's thick, anywhere that provides good cover, where it's not easily accessible by man, I think they're there.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think there's a lot more of them out there than most people realize. A lot of researchers will tell you they think
I need
that
to go to
there's
bed,
a limited
guys.
amount.
We'll do
I
one
don't
bet,
think there's a limited
and
amount.
I'm gonna hit the hay.
And I don't think that. Well, I got to be careful what I say there. I think if you go looking, you may end up finding them, or finding evidence of them.
Now, being a truck driver over the road, I've got my camera at the ready, and I hope I have an encounter, and I hope it's while I'm sitting in the seat and it's outside.
Yeah.
But
20 seconds
how it
left
is,
for
from what I hear,
bets.
the sightings are usually when you least expect it. But, well, I did want to add one thing that people might find interesting, and that's about the government and their knowledge. Now, I was in law enforcement, and this was back in the early 90s. And I spent 6 years. It was a promising career, and I got tired of it and decided I didn't want to do it. But during that 6-year tenure, I was a member of the Pennsylvania State Police, and I was a trooper. And at every barracks I was at, on the console at the PCO desk where I had to work as a trooper, desk duty, we all did, with a civilian PCO, maybe one night a week. I got injured at one point, was on it for weeks. And there's amongst all the phone numbers, all the government numbers, the tow truck numbers, the ambulance, the governor's office, out on the right-hand side of every barracks I was at, 3 different barracks I know for sure, because I looked, there's the Bigfoot UFO hotline. And when you're in a career like that, even though I've always been interested in this subject, I didn't talk about these subjects back then because it was a sure-way ticket to a shrink and career suicide. But I asked at least 1 or 2 older troopers about that number, and of course they smirked and laughed. And well, that's the number you give to the coots when they call, and it's pretty much the answer to that. My curiosity got the best of me one night. I called the number, and sure enough, it was an automated recording asking me my name, my information, and a narrative of my encounter or whatever it is I was calling in for. Of course, I didn't have one, and I hung up on it. And later I used my credentials, and I called the phone company, and of course, in the performance of duties, if you were investigating harassing calls or anything like that, you could get the phone company at that time to trace a number. And I had them research the number, and it went, if memory serves me right, it's been 30 years, it went either to the Department of Agriculture or the Department of the Interior in Washington, D.C.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes, and now, is that number still at all them barracks? My guess is it is. Now, with the internet and things have changed, it's been 30 years, I'm sure their whole systems have changed. But that number was at least 3 barracks, so that tells me it was at all of them. And there's a barracks per county, every county in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I've always found that intriguing, and that's just a little more evidence to me that the government knows what's going on.
Yeah, I have no doubt that they do. I agree with you 100%.
Anyhow, I thought you guys would like hearing about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that with us. You know, that's something to where you don't hear that too often, but it doesn't shock me, really, to be honest with you. It doesn't shock me. I mean, I've talked to tribal police on reservations, and whenever there's strange UFO or Sasquatch related, they have a special number. They've told me they have a special number to call, and then those people deal with it. But if you ask them who it is, no one seems to know who it is. That's not the first time I've heard that. It's mainly on the tribal lands I've heard that before.
Right. But that's pretty much it for me. The older I get, the more of an obsession it becomes for me. You know, I have my page on Facebook, and I'm trying to work on a website right now.
Hey, good night, guys. Really appreciate you being here, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Take care, guys.
Now, I can get the money up to do that, and I'm very intrigued by it. I love it. It's a hobby, and I hope to get out there more sometime.
What's your Facebook page?
Well, I have a group called Club of Secrets. In fact, you're on there. You just don't look at it. I cover everything from Bigfoot to paranormal and government conspiracies. Just a hobby of mine.
And is it open? Can anyone go check it out, or do you got to join?
It's a closed group, and if you're a member, you can add anybody. You're on there. You're an added member. So
yeah,
just look it up under my name, Club of Secrets. It's a closed group. Yeah, you have to be added.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on, Ryan. I know you're driving right now, and you're busy. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the show and share the sound with us and share the experiences. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your show and all the witnesses that call in. I love it. It's very worthwhile, and you do us all a service. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Next up on the show, I want to welcome Dan. Dan is in law enforcement, so if you hear the radio in the background, he's actually multitasking at the moment. So if you need to break away, Dan, just let me know. Obviously, it's more important than our conversation if some emergency should come up. But if you would kind of start from the beginning, I know you've had experiences, and I took some time and really looked at the video you sent me, and I was really interested by that. Where did you kind of want to start with this, with the audience? Did you want to start with your encounters?
Sure. I mean, most of my stuff comes from guys that I've talked to or friends of mine, just in passing. Kind of in our field, it's kind of taboo. So getting guys to talk to you a little bit, I'm pretty impressed with the amount of guys and police officers you've had on. Maybe if we start with the newest episode with my buddy out of Georgia.
Yeah, let's start there. Tell us about that incident. Walk us into it.
Right. So in a nutshell, people know that I believe in Bigfoot, etc. So every once in a while I get, a post or a Bigfoot shows up on my Facebook or something like that. And I've known this guy for like 30 years. Well, he hits me up on the phone and he says, "Hey, what's up with the Facebook thing? Is that a joke about Bigfoot?" I'm like, "No, I think it's a real creature." And then he proceeds to tell me that last year he's out hunting in Georgia, and he says he thinks he sees a bear walking along the tree lines, and he says he brings up his rifle with scoped. I think it said it's 3x9, and he said that he was blown away. He said there's no question. He said it's like 7 to 8 foot Sasquatch walking along the tree line. That was like it in a nutshell. He said there's no doubt, and he said it's I know they exist. It was his quote.
Did he describe the creature to you?
Thought it was a brownish kind of bear color, and other than the height and big, I didn't really dig into it a whole lot. I just kind of acknowledged it and talked a little bit to him about it, some of the things that I've heard, etc. Pretty simplistic, but I mean that's pretty credible evidence. I mean, he said he's looking through a 3x9 at something, no doubt is a Sasquatch. I could hit him up and probably try and gather some more details, maybe about like the face or etc.
And that's interesting. Did he believe in Sasquatch prior to that?
I don't think he actually believed in it. I mean, he's open-minded. I mean, he's been a hunter all his life, etc. The way he tested the water with me, I mean, I've known this guy for 30 years. We've hunted together a ton of times. I mean, obviously he lives in Georgia. But for him to to test the water like that tells me that, he probably hasn't told anyone else, and he was probably pretty unsure about the subject before telling me. So I think he's open-minded, but I don't think he was, quote, knew it existed until then. I mean, he flat told me then. He goes, I know they exist.
And I know you spent some time as a game warden, too, as well, prior to getting into law enforcement. Most people may not know your background, but this isn't your first rodeo out in the woods. And you had come across some very interesting footage. Can you talk about that? Where did you come across it, and what did you think it was when you saw it? Kind of what's the story behind the video?
The nutshell is that I have a friend that I had assigned to a federal task force. He had a buddy who had been assigned to some guerrilla grows in Northern California, and a guerrilla grow is where the cartels really grow marijuana in the furthest reach of the forest, the further away from civilization the better, so they go undiscovered. Well, these guys had gone in about 27 miles, I think 22 by quad and then the rest by foot, and put up trail cameras to try and capture some of this cartel coming in and out tending their gardens. And ultimately, when he retrieved the camera, he said when he found it, it was off the tree. You can compare how that happened. But then he played the video. He said he was absolutely shocked and that he didn't know what to make of it. Well, they brought it to me, and I looked at it, and I thought that it's not conclusive, but it sure definitely looks like some type of bipedal animal. I mean, you've got an arm, you've got a leg. I think you can see a hand at some point. The hair looks really coarse, but the structure is not right for a bear. Unfortunately, it's a pretty short clip. I think he had it set on probably about 10 seconds because obviously they want these cameras. They're not going to trek that far back in, every other week to check them. So they have them set on short clips.
Yeah, it was interesting when I was looking at it. It didn't look like what it reminded me of. I probably watched it 100 times last night. I slowed it down. I'll put it up on the website. But what was interesting is it really reminded me of an orangutan sitting there throwing leaves almost on top of the camera. Is that kind of what you thought you saw?
It looks to me like it's purposely placed the camera in the leaf pile and is grabbing a handful of leaves and putting it over top of the camera. It looks like it's an intelligent attempt to conceal the trail cam. And I don't know what could do that. I don't know what could reach up and rip it off the tree. It definitely looks to me like it's standing bipedally. The structure of the arm, etc., doesn't look anything like a bear to me. I mean, it's just the bend is wrong.
Yeah, the bend is wrong. The color's wrong. The hair's wrong. And if that's a suit, that's one hell of a suit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I tried to slow it down a little bit, but it looks like the hair thins out in the abdominal region and is pretty uniform throughout the arm, but kind of like a coarse. Were you able to see the hand or the thumb at one point?
I did. Yeah.
Does that look like a hand to you?
Yeah. It did. It definitely looked like a hand. Remind me of orangutan, really. Remind me of orangutan. Orangutans have hands very similar to ours. And that's really what I thought when I first saw it. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. But then you hear about where it's at, and you're like, I don't think orangutan's going to survive out there. If you don't believe in Bigfoot, I guess orangutan's the only other explanation. What got you interested in this whole topic? What really piqued your interest in it?
I'd have to say it goes probably way back to Patterson, the Patty film. As a kid, I mean, seeing that, and then being a lifetime hunter, fisher, etc. I've always kind of had a curiosity about the unknown and specifically Bigfoot, just because it's a mystery, and obviously that's kind of the thing I like to do based on what I do is to dive in and try and solve mysteries. So I'm just intrigued by it, and the evidence. I like doing the research. I like putting things together. And, formulating what I think. I don't have any doubt. I mean, I've never seen one, but that's what I do. I put together pieces of the pie, crime scenes, etc. And, we weigh the evidence. And to me, there's absolutely no doubt that Sasquatch exists. I mean, we take people to trial and convict them of murder on less evidence. And yet we're going to say that with all this evidence that it's not a proven animal is just, to me, is ludicrous.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you said that. And I was talking to a skeptic the other day, and I don't mind skeptics at all, but I was talking to a skeptic the other day, and I said, just take 3 months and look into this. And if after 3 months you're convinced this is all BS, I'll accept what you have to say. But just take 3 months, give it an honest shake, and go out there, look at some of these track casts, listen to some of the eyewitnesses, and come back and tell me what you think. And after 3 months, he came back and he said, you know what, I think it probably exists now. He goes, I thought it was a joke before, but I didn't realize the amount of evidence that is actually out there. And I know you yourself have heard tree knocks and footsteps, and you've experienced the fear. Was that when you were out hunting?
No, I had gone on an expedition with a group, and the first night I was there, I heard two, but big, wide stride, heavy footsteps outside the tent. And I mean, I can't say for sure what it was, but I mean, we're humans. We know what people sound like. We know what bipedal sounds like when we walk. And, especially hunters, that's, we gauge animals with what's coming, It's how you tell for the most part by listening to the pattern of the step or et cetera. And it was obviously to me something big, heavy, and bipedal. Later that morning or the next morning I went out there and there were two big impressions, but it only looked like the heel was there. No toes, nothing else discernible. And the next night was a massive tree knock. I mean, it sounded like, Will Clark had let loose on a tree.
Yeah.
It was just insane. I mean, I've heard a lot of people, hit trees. I've hit trees with something, but I've never heard anything like that. I mean, it was a massive crack. And then there was a secondary, probably 100 yards away that seemed like to be a reply to that. We had gone out on a night hike, and 3 of us had broken away from the group. And I'm pretty confident in the woods. I mean, I've been out at night many a time, going to my tree stand at O'Dark 30. That doesn't really faze me. And I've been in a lot of hairy situations. I mean, I've been doing search warrants in the house with homicide suspects with the SWAT team, and I've never experienced fear like that. I had to do combat breathing to reel myself in, and I have no idea. I mean, I was just walking through the forest, everything was cool, we're just looking around, and then all of a sudden just this overwhelming fear. I mean, I wanted to run. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. Honestly, until I listened to your show and started listening to people describe that over and over again, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I just kind of thought, I freaked myself out. But after listening to you and other people talk about it, it started making sense as to why. And it was just crazy. Insane fear for no reason.
Yeah, and that fear is really hard to describe to someone that hasn't experienced it. I've had guys on the show that have been in combat and had, bullets flying past their head, and they say the fear that they experienced, what you're talking about, Dan, is compare that to battle. They'll take shots flying over their head any day of the week and twice on Sunday compared to what they experienced. And I've been trying to look into that and try and figure out what is causing that, what is causing this deep, scary fear to hit us, because you hear a lot of people experience that. I mean, I've had some of the biggest, baddest guys on the planet on the show, and they'll break down in tears because they were out there, they had overwhelming fear, they couldn't explain it, and all they wanted to do is run. And I don't think, a lot of these guys, I don't think they've ever run from anything, ever, in their life.
Yeah, I've been a SWAT team for 16 years. I've done many and many entries for bad guys. I've been shot at. I've had rounds fly past my head. Nothing even close. I mean, not combat. What those guys do in combat is totally different. I mean, I can't even imagine that. But I've been in the oh shit moments,